I guess we're live. Must be live. All right. Well, welcome to the rebooted channel. I'm Sam, and I'm just going to be reading some books. I don't have any particular talent for it. I haven't ever done it professionally or even semi-professionally. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, but there are many books not available in audio that I want to read, and I find it hard to make myself do something that's not a multitask of some kind these days. And so I've decided, starting here, December 1st, Eastern Time, barely, to get that started. And my first book that I'm going to read is called God's Fare No Better, Book 1, Dying World by J. David Osborne. I could tell you a bunch about JDO, the founder, owner, publisher, editor, etc. of Broken River Books, podcaster for lots of different things, and been writing a long time, but I won't go into that. You can look up J. David Osborne if you want. I will say this is supposed to be cool, gritty, cyberpunk-y awesomeness, and that sounds good. And it's basically a cold reading. I've read the first page and a half maybe before I decided I wanted to just go ahead and do this. And I asked him, and he said, sure, do whatever you want. I think that's permission, right? Yeah, totally. So, God's Fare No Better, Book 1, Dying World by J. David Osborne. Copyright J. David Osborne. Cover copyright Tony McMillan. All rights reserved. No portion of this book may be reproduced in any form without written permission from the publisher or author, except as permitted by U.S. copyright law, and hopefully a fairly random Twitter message chat where I was told I could do what I wanted. That seems totally, yeah, let's do it. So he mentioned this on Twitter too. Instead of a dedications thank you page, he went with an inspirations page. So let's read that. Inspirations. This series took its inspiration from the following works. I am forever grateful to the authors and creative teams who gave this art to the world. Respect. Tetsuo, the Iron Man. Akira. Ichi the Killer. Cyberpunk 2077. Cyberpunk 2020. Dead or Alive Trilogy by Takashi Miike. Animistic, Gordon White. Oh, I could sidebar on that right now, but I won't. Berserk, Blade Runner, Neuromancer, Snow Crash. That's like my greatest hits right there. God of War, Blame, Cyber City Oedo 808, Meatball Machine, Ghost in the Shell, Dark Souls, Coin Locker Babies by Ryu Murakami, The Palliative Society by Byung-Chul Han, White Jazz by James Elroy, music listened to while writing this book, the Cyberpunk 2077 soundtrack, Danny Brown, Tim Hecker, One Hitrix Point Never. Sorry, that's not something I would recognize. Sun O, right parenthesis, right parenthesis, right parenthesis. Robin, Tobacco, Korn, of course, System of a Down, and Skrillex. Solid. Let's go. Chapter 1. Money got tight. Hadn't been a job in weeks. Good for Cyclone City, bad for Kintaro's billfold. He made a trip down to the Dying World Clerics of Peaceful Transitions HQ on Barker Street. He sat in an uncomfortable fold-out chair and told it to Wolf straight. Rent's due, electric's due, I'm eating noodles every day. If you'd asked me a month ago how I felt about noodles, I would have told you I'm the #1 fan. Crack an egg on that shit. So good. But now, I can't eat noodles anymore. I can't sell any more plasma. I can't battery. Is there any bad weather on the horizon at all? Wolf shrugged. I told you. Skies have been clear all summer. We had that monsoon last week, and not a single twister touched down. Kentaro scratched his head. I've got to do something. You don't have to do anything. Money. What do you have to worry about money for? You've got a room here. You've got safety, protection, and you've got food. I've got fucking noodles, man. This is the problem with you people. See, you don't remember what you used to... Go back. See, you don't remember what you used to be like. You want to see pictures of your handiwork? Kentaro frowned. No. You came here for a reason. You hated the person you'd become and you wanted a fresh start. Full memory wipe. A life of service and meditation. And you want to go back out into that world? That wasn't the only thing he'd wiped. The story, at least as far as Wolf told him, was that Migdoc got a little bit too into his work. All Kentaro's XP was gone. And not just the memories of his murder for hire, everything. I feel like I need to grow. Nobody here has any ambition. They don't eat, fine. They don't eat. But that's not me. Kentaro. Wolf folded his hands in front of him and leaned in. Let me tell you about yourself. When you came here, you had one goal in life, upgrade. Body, mind, and bankroll. Imagine how I feel, this legend strolling in, this albino motherfucker with more bodies on him than most small corporations. I know what you paid for all that yarn, for the targeting system, the ice tech. Kentaro ran his hand along the geometric pattern of surgery scars cut through his close-cropped haircut. I made a mistake. That isn't me. The person who made that decision for me isn't me. You're a drunk driver. What? You're a drunk driver, kid. Simple as that. Say you're on your bike and you're blackout drunk. Now, the person who made that decision isn't the person who wakes up the next morning. But in this scenario, you ran over a kid. Splattered the brains all over the sidewalk. Is it your fault? Kentaro shrugged. Of course it is. The person who decided to take that first drink isn't the person who takes the second, on until the person who decides to take his 30th and get on the bike. But the person who took that first drink knew what was inside of him, knew what he was capable of. Just like the Kentaro who chose to go under the knife is still in there somewhere rattling around. Kentaro pinched the bridge of his nose. You're going in circles, man. The you who chose to have his memory wiped is the you who's trying to get back on the streets. What's aphorism 45? By this point, Kentaro could remember them all by heart. Our head is a home for spirits. You contain multitudes, kid. You're the guy who took the first drink and the guy who blacked out. It's all you. But it's also not you. The you who's sitting in front of me right now has to pay for the sins of the you who first walked in here. Doesn't matter if you can't fucking remember. So what am I supposed to do? What about the charitable donation? Kentaro had found out about this through chatting up the other clerics. When he'd come in, he'd offered up all of his worldly possessions except for the vanishing twin. Everything he had, so long as they wiped his mind and let him stay. You mean, I'm guessing this is Wolf here. You mean all the money that you gave to me voluntarily? It's in the treasury, with the rest of my money. Kentaro felt something well up inside of him, the old version of himself coming back. You know something funny, he said, standing up. Wolf leaned back in his chair. Kentaro knew he had a finger on the panic button. What's really funny is this. He unsheathed his katana and whipped the blade fast, coming to a stop against the side of Wolf's neck. The twin hummed. Wolf thought in the distance he could hear the singing of children. This thing talks to me sometimes, Kentaro said. Through my mind. At least I think it does. and it told me that there's a bit more to this than you're letting on. Your sword talks to you. Mm-hmm. And it tells you what, exactly? Kentaro paused. He put the katana back in its sheath, strapped to his back. I'm not sure. Forget it. He made for the door, just as two young clerics burst in, FGC-9s up and ready to go. Kentaro turned back to Wolf. Tell them to chill out. Wolf nodded at the men. They lowered their pistols. Something you just said clicked with me. Thank you for that, Kentaro said. I do contain multitudes. You need someone to throw tomahawks at twisters, you give me a call. But I'm done. Fuck you, kid. Lose my number. Kentaro shrugged. That's fair. You hold on to my money for me. Wait. You hold on to my money for now. You enjoy that. I will. Kentaro shouldered his way through the two guards and went out the door. Could have heard a pin drop in the office. Clerics on mats, hunched over desks filling out forms, sparring in the corner. They all stared at him. He walked out of the office and down the stairs. The billfold system on his wrist beeped. He was almost dry. The city found a way to drain it out of you. Kentaro felt like gambling. He'd head down to Mika's game in Mold Town, play a few rounds and see how it went. If not, he'd log on to Hustle and flip his light from red to green. People needed to die every day in Cyclone City, and the fixers messaged him periodically while he was holed up in the monastery, asking if he was back on the market. It didn't matter to them that he'd gone back to square one, all of his experience gone. The Vanishing Twin was the Vanishing Twin. His jobs had been done efficiently and for a reasonable price. The fact that he couldn't remember shit just meant that he was more available. Old grudges were forgotten. A new start with an old reputation. I think I better pause for tonight. It's really late. I had a long day. But I knew if I didn't start it tonight, I wasn't going to start it. So, hopefully you enjoyed that. And I'll try to stream tomorrow or the next day. Who knows? And thanks, JDO. Congrats on the new book. It just came out, I guess now yesterday. And now that it's rolled past midnight, for me at least. So, cheers. This has been me reading books to you. All right, we'll get started again soon. This is Sam reading books. It's very exciting. It's going to be part 2 of Dying World, Gods Fare No Better, Book 1 by J. David Osborne. But before I get going too far, I was going to at least correct some things I messed up the first time. I talked about JDO's being a podcaster. The main one I meant to mention, but now that I'm almost 45, proper nouns just disappear from my brain, let alone adjectives and other things. But it's the agitator. It's very focused on anime and rap music, and they get guests from all over to join in, and it's a pretty good time. They also have a really good Patreon where you can get some behind-the-scenes mini podcasts and other stuff like that, and those are also pretty cool. Just like driving their truck around Oklahoma or New Mexico or wherever, and just stream of consciousness on whatever. It's it's a pretty cool thing. Also, you might have noticed last night, basically blinding light coming from my computer monitors. I've now activated the night mode on my Kindle Cloud Reader, and so we'll hopefully not burn our retinas out in the dark here. And lastly, I actually did get a question last time, about why did I do a snap when I made a mistake narrating. And that's a trick I learned from podcasting Hall of Famer Mur Lafferty. Basically, later on, if I ever do decide to go back and edit down these raw, live, cold reads into something, if it's worth attempting at all, that snap will be a little spike in the waveform in an audio editor, and that'll be really easy to home in on and go, oh, look at that big spike of a snap. That's where there's a mistake, and that's where I need to edit out something, and that's a little inside baseball. So that's it about that. I think that's already way too much time spent on things that aren't reading, so I'm going to hop right back. Oh boy, that's not a good start. I should have had something better than water to drink. All right, so let's hop back in. Dying World, Gods Fare No Better, Book 1, Chapter 2. Outside the run-down monastic offices of the Dying World clerics of peaceful transition, Kentaro took a deep breath. The city smelled like fresh-cut grass and sewage. CCPD cruisers lounged at both ends of the street. Windows at full tint, the officers inside either asleep or hooked into the scanner, which to an outside observer would look like the same thing. An Oxcorp quick-pass taxi flew overhead, scattering takeout boxes and soda cans across the street. Barker Street bustled. Pearl-white cowboy hats, long-bone bead breastplates, shiny silver suits. Cyclone City was the hillbilly, abiotic oil capital of America, and it shared elements with other megacities, the skyscrapers, the Skinners, hollow ads, the chrome. Clerics and yogis mingled with 7-foot-tall dance hall queens down streets lined with signs in enough languages to confuse even the most advanced lingo chip, but it still had a southern feel to it. The aesthetics of the roughnecks and natives, brave enough to live outside the city limits, filtered through the rainbow memeplex of the rhizome. Kentaro fucked with it. He cut through the Grapefruit District, a posh shopping center near the center of town. The smells got better. He passed a coffee shop where a woman in augmented reality glasses yelled at her bank account. He window-shopped bookstores and boutique clothing stores before he started getting looks. A part of him was used to it. His stark white skin, white hair, red eyes occasionally drew looks. But he knew that wasn't the only thing. These types of people got nervous around a man with a katana strapped to his back. He understood and kept it moving south. He walked under an overpass and read the graffiti on the support pillars. One word on each: goodness, gracious, me, oh my. And then a stick figure with a massive hard-on shooting ropes at the sun. The humidity got to him. Cyclone City stayed dry throughout the year, but last week's monsoon had brought flies, mosquitoes, and a lingering stickiness. Kentaro reminded himself to breathe. In through the nose, hold for a second, sharp inhale, then out. He took another shortcut along an aqueduct sticky with green algae, admiring the twisted metal of the abiotic oil refineries shooting flames into blue sky. He found a clipped fence, wiggled through it, and jogged. It'd help if I had focus on the right screen. And jogged through the neighborhood, past 10-foot-high fences and the mean-as-shit pit bulls they kept in. He lingered only for a moment to admire hundreds of red clay pots crowding a porch, save the path from the door to the driveway. He could smell Mold Town from here. He got excited. Fuck Wolf. Fuck the clerics. He'd make his own way. Today, he was going to make a fuck ton of money. He could feel it. 3. Mold Town consisted of 89 acres of bars, nightclubs, love hotels, arcades, massage parlors, casinos, apartments, Government housing, laundromats, corner stores, fry bread stands, ramen shops, taquerias, and countless dens of criminal activity. In a few districts of Cyclone City, the council had done their best to spruce up the buildings, tearing down the wabi-sabi structures and building newer, fresher, smoother buildings. Moldtown, everyone knew, would be last on the list for improvement. Property values were low, sure, but the lifers would fight to keep the sentient mold at the district center out of corpo hands till their dying breath. Some said they were controlled by the psychic force of the master mold, but Kentaro liked to think they were just good old-fashioned eco-terrorists, same as the kind that would tie themselves to a tree or rescue a monkey from a cage. Either way, he hoped it would never change. He paused and peeked in at an empty lot. Early riser afternoon gamblers shot craps on an upturned garbage bins. The sun was going down. Out on the street, the bars were gearing up for their evening rush. People found parking spaces. A few youngsters killed tall boys on the street, and a boy with a prosthetic leg kept trying and failing to grind a rail. Nowhere near the chaos these streets would see in about 8 hours, but the hustlers were dedicated. Kentaro scoped the scene. 5 groups of 6 or 7 men each. He saw Asan in his tracksuit and gold chain. Couldn't believe that man had survived as long as he had. Toward the back fence, Gene played honest games, but he drank too much and was rolling in the grass, hollering at God. 5 men who looked like extras for a superhero info dump stood stoically against the far brick wall of row homes. He headed for Micah's game. "Kentaro," Micah said through her face mask. "Haven't seen your sweet ass in a minute." "Has it been that long?" Kentaro said, nudging himself into the game. The silent players made room for him, all of them identical, with slick black hair, inky black eyes, and black face masks. "What have we got here?" "A game of chance. Some say a game of skill." "Can we play dominoes?" "No." "Is this a game where I can make a little money?" "There is that chance, some say." "Well then," Kentaro offered up his billfold wrist, "tap me in." "You know the rules. The twin has to sit by the fence." Kentaro took the sword off his back and laid it within sight, behind Micah. "Don't lose your shirt," the sword whispered. "I won't." "Don't lose your sword." "That was one time, and I got you back." The twin said nothing. 4. Kentaro and Micah went way back. At least that's what she told him. When he came out of surgery, he could remember a few things. This game in Moldtown was one of them. Their conversations tended to be surface level, flirtation that often dipped into full-on sexual harassment. Micah was clear on this. She wanted his penis. That made him feel strange in his gut. He'd blush and change the subject. This time, however, the talk stayed platonic. While they played the 3 shrimp pickup, Micah told him about taking her dog to the vet. "I couldn't imagine working there. Nothing more depressing. While I'm waiting there with Bill, these 2 women come in carrying a dead dog. One's got the front end, the other the back. They tell the clerk behind the desk that the dog has collapsed on the way there. The women are hysterical, and the vet comes out and tells them that the dog is definitely dead. They're weeping, inconsolable, and then he takes them aside and starts whispering. So I listen in. I didn't pay for new ears for nothing. The doctor is telling the women that there's a cemetery in the birdhouse district behind a used car lot. Apparently, there used to be some kind of military operation going on before the blast doors were built, before the cyclones even. Anyway, he tells these inconsolable women that if they bury their dog there and pour gallons and Anyway, he tells those inconsolable women that if they bury their dog there and pour gallons and gallons of Dominator into the grave, sometimes, the dogs come back to life. Do they have to bury the dog there? Could you do this from the safety of your home? I don't think so. Something about the soil there getting all fucked up from military experiments. And the energy drinks? They're packed with electrolytes and B vitamins. How was Bill? Healthy as a horse. Disappointed that I had Healthy as a horse? Disappointed that I had him cut his nuts off, though. Understandable. So what's up with you? Keeping us safe from the storms? Not anymore. Had a bit of a falling out with the clerics today. Micah nodded her head. I expected you would eventually. Yeah, why's that? She got awkward about it. Forget I said anything. It's okay now. The hangover's done. What does that mean? I'm not pushing it away anymore. When they did work on me, they did some serious work. I lost a lot more than I intended to lose. You sure? It's what I think, so yeah, I'm sure. What do you want to know? What was I like? Micah looked at the other guys playing three shrimp. They stared blankly ahead, their hands moving independently of the rest of them. Could be vessels, could be people too deep in a program lost to the world. She figured they wouldn't notice any non-game information. The software was nice like that. She said, You were something else. I knew it. I was a bad motherfucker, wasn't I? You had money, that's for sure. One of my favorite customers. I had money, and I came to play made-up games in an abandoned lot. You went everywhere. She put a plastic cup over 3 live shrimp. But yeah, you came down here a lot. Wait a minute, Kentaro said, pushing 2 plastic chips toward the pot. Were you and I... No. Kentaro sucked his teeth. Liar. You were like asexual or something? He frowned. I didn't fuck? At all. Doesn't sound like me. You'd gone too far. You didn't see people as people anymore? Kentaro stayed quiet. Micah burst out laughing. I'm fucking with you. I used to hit that at least twice a week. We should resume activities. My friend, I have been waiting for you to say that. Must have been good. You were the only thing I remembered when I woke up. Micah's cheeks went red. Was I in love with you? She pulled her mask down. Seeing her face, the X scars on each cheek, triggered something in him. Let's talk about something else. One of the stoic gamblers finally spoke. Lift the cup, please. She put her mask back up. Right. Sorry, boys. She lifted the cup to reveal 2 shrimps wrestling each other. Kentaro slammed his fist down lightly. Where the hell did the 3rd shrimp go? The catatonic players were unfazed. Well, that's my time, he said, and my money. He stood up. Come back whenever, Micah said. I'll be here. You know free money when you see it. I do. Kentaro stood and turned to leave. Then he turned back. How about you and I get together tonight? Micah did not hesitate. You bet your ass. I'll message you my info. Conflict of interest, one of the stoics said. Banned from game. Micah dumped 5 shrimp in front of him. Shut up. New game. 5. Kentaro had time to kill. He picked up the vanishing twin and waved goodbye to Micah. Before he could get very far, he was stopped by the men he'd clocked on the way in. The superheroes. 5 of them, all covered in tattoos from head to toe. The ink still looked fresh. The tattoos had no rhyme or reason to them. Sailor Jerry pinups, prison-style cats, guns, knives, and spiderwebs. A few of the men had brilliant orange koi fish on their forearms. Others had cartoon flames. He noticed on the shortest man a cat and a dog 69. On the shortest man, a cat and a dog 69ing on his neck. What a strange collection of tattoos you all have, Kentaro said. The leader stepped forward and smiled sparkling diamond shark teeth. Our strategy is to get as many of them done as we can, then laser off the ones we don't like. Kind of a try before you buy thing. Ouch. Yeah, but the results speak for themselves. Kentaro was looking at the results. Awesome, he said. Excuse me, fellas, I'm headed out. Diamond Shark held a hand out, fingers lightly grazing Kentaro's chest. We were admiring your jacket. Thank you. Especially that sigil on the back. You wouldn't happen to be a dying world cleric, would you? Kentaro sighed. Yes. The men exchanged looks. Kentaro had a bad feeling about this, but at that point it could have gone one of 2 ways. He focused on his breathing. The vanishing twin hummed at his back. This one is going the other way, the bad way. I was hoping you'd say that, Diamond Shark said. There are a lot of pretenders out there. They'll wear that sigil for the clout. Stolen valor, said a red-headed burn victim to Diamond Shark's right. Kentaro wished that he had paid closer attention, or that he could somehow project himself behind these guys to get a look at their sigils. They didn't feel friendly, but you never knew. There were plenty of palliative societies. Not very many were friendly with each other. It's good that you're not a fake, Diamond Shark said. You'd hate to see what we do to fakes. Right, Kentaro said. Good night, fellas. Diamond Shark grabbed Kentaro's arm. You're not a cleric anymore, Kentaro. Do you know how long I've been waiting for this? Kentaro pushed him away and stepped back. Look, I can't remember shit. I don't know who you are. But we, Diamond Shark said, we remember you. He removed a small pistol from his belt. It buzzed and whirred, the metal from the barrel turning liquid smooth as it traveled up his arm to just below his elbow. The gun was no longer small. It had transformed Diamond Shark's arm into a cannon. Prepare to die. The men fanned out and barked in unison, Black Knight's posse of universal vengeance. It's time. Take me out. Kentaro unsheathed the vanishing twin. 6. The gamblers in the lot scattered, some scaling the fence, others inching their way around the standoff. Micah calmly walked to the fence and leaned against it, pulling her mask down to light a cigarette. The other Black Knights engaged their weapons. 2 small chainsaws grew from the wrists of one of the men. Another's hands turned blue, and Kentaro could feel the cold from where he stood. Still another grew enormous bat wings, painted with red and gold eyes. The final man, the red-headed burn victim, clenched his fists and scrunched his face and screamed like he was trying to take a huge shit. Finally, his entire head lit on fire. Kentaro raised an eyebrow. What does that do exactly? The man screamed, It hurts! And charged. Kentaro spun his sword once, feeling its perfect balance, and engaged the Black Knights. He separated the flaming head from its owner's body cleanly, the head shooting up briefly before fizzling out like a lit fart. I told you a flaming head was pointless, yelled Diamond Shark, but I still loved you like a brother. He pointed his hand cannon at Kentaro. Die! Kentaro kicked off the ground, side flipping to his right, narrowly avoiding the shots fired from the hand cannon. He landed behind one of the upturned metal garbage bins that had served as a craps table. Not a whole lot of wiggle room. Bullets rattled the bin. Kentaro could hear their spray pattern migrating around to where he hid. Chunks of dirt ripped out of the earth at his feet. How many rounds has this guy got? He heard the flapping of wings. Looking up, he saw bat wings flying over him. They were trying to box him in. Diamond Shark's hand cannon clicked. Empty. Time to go. He sprang to his feet and took off at a sprint. How long did he have before the shark could reload? The nearest Black Knight to him was Chainsaw Hands. Kentaro charged with the vanishing twin held over his head. It felt right, the katana aligning with the straightness of his spine. At the last second, he switched to a yokogiri, with the katana at his side, extending out to his right. He ducked under a buzzing right cross, the chainsaw catching thin air. In one fluid motion, he brought the twin up, slicing Chainsaw Hand's abdomen open from right to left. Blood arced beautifully against the orange evening sky. Chainsaw Hands instinctively reached for the guts spilling out of him, and the buzzing saws tore his insides to bits. He heard the chunk of Diamond Shark reloading, and knew that he was almost out of time. His mind went perfectly blank. The little bit of time he had left slowed to a crawl. The Iceman was busy powering up some kind of magic. Diamond Shark took aim. He didn't see a way out of this. And then, Batwing saved his life. Not intentionally, of course, but in his haste to avenge his fallen friends, he'd swooped in on Kentaro, curved blades in his hands. When he was nearly upon him, Kentaro dropped his sword, jumped and twisted, enveloping Batwings in a bear hug. They spun end over end, crashing into the hard dirt and broken bottles. Kentaro felt something pop in his back. He'd worry about it later. Diamond Shark yelled, "I had him, you fucking idiot!" Sweat poured down his face. "I can't get a shot!" Iceman's attack had powered up. He walked gracefully toward the messy, brawling heap Kentaro and Batwings had devolved into. The two of them rolled across the grass, looking for an angle, Kentaro keeping a vice grip on Batwing's wrists. The blades inches from his eyes. A blue orb of energy enveloped the Iceman. "Should I freeze them both?" Diamond Shark sighed. "Yeah, we can apologize to Steve later." Iceman nodded and held his palms out at the tussling combatants. Using the strength he had left, Kentaro rolled onto his side. Batwings took the full brunt of the ice energy blast. His wings froze, then ice crept up his shoulders, over his face, down his chest. When the ice reached his arms, Kentaro let go of his wrists. He snapped Batwings' hands off and pried the curved blades out of them. Coming up over the frozen body, he sent the blades flying across the lot. One missed completely, but the other found his target, landing between Iceman's eyes with a thunk. The blade peeked out of the back of his skull, dripping blood. He fell to his knees, then to his side. Diamond Shark was in shock. He couldn't move. Kentaro stood tall, lifted his knee to his chest, and brought his boot down on Batwing's head, shattering it into ice cubes. Diamond Shark fell to his knees. Kentaro walked steadily over to where the vanishing twin had been dropped. He picked it up and inspected it, brought a rag out of his back pocket, and cleaned the blade. The shark had a full clip, but Kentaro sensed he wouldn't use it. He was done. The lot felt hermetically sealed off from the world. Street traffic, the bars, all of it went quiet. Diamond Shark said, "Those were all the friends I had in the world." Kentaro approached him and squatted down. He put his hand on the man's shoulder and looked into his eyes. The shark began to cry. Kentaro speared him with the twin, up under the jaw and out the crown of his head. The tip of the blade dripped blood. Kentaro watched as tiny red baby hands emerged from the blade to collect the fragments of skull to absorb the dead man's essence. He gave them time, then pulled the blade free. On his way out, Micah called to him from the fence line. "When they come around asking, do you want credit for it?" Kentaro shook his head. "You got it," she said. Sheathing his blade, Kentaro walked out onto the street. Everything seemed so much clearer after a fight like that. The crisscrossing matrices of power lines buzzed and hummed. Bottles and ice cubes clinked as the bars finished their evening prep. Music started down the street, something abrasive, loud guitars. The people passed him. They wore their weekend best, low-cut tops and sleeveless T-shirts. Girls hanging on boys, some boys chasing after girls. He smelled patchouli, oak, something floral. He wondered how many of the passerby had been watching a few moments earlier. He heard the sirens coming, but moved on steadily, unbothered. When palliative societies fought, the cops ignored it for the most part. The medics would clean up, and everyone would move on. Blah, blah, blah. I was almost done. And everyone would move on to something actually important. His heads-up display indicated that Micah's info had come through. Another message loaded up in front of his eyes. He'd gained 2 experience points for that. The yarn in his brain wriggled and writhed, and he felt himself become a bit more powerful. The yarn learned. The yarn rewarded hard work. He'd keep working hard. He smiled to himself. And I think that's what I'll hold off for tonight. It's once again after midnight. I got another late start, but thinking I want to rethink the voice for the twin for his katana. I got to think about that one for a bit. But looks like we get a new point of view character here, so no spoiling myself. I'll come back, chapter 7. I'll come back to you hopefully tomorrow. Peace. And for now, that has been Sam reading books. All right. Welcome back to Sam Reading Things. I'm Sam. And we're still reading Dying World, which is book 1 of a new cyberpunk series called Gods Fare No Better by J. David Osborne. This is the 3rd session so far out of question mark, somewhere between a 5th and a 4th of the way through this relatively short novel. And don't know how long we'll get, but I'm having a good time. Story so far, if you want to catch up a little bit without going back and watching the 2 other sessions so far, let me switch over to my reader and go back to remember some names. Kentaro is our so far protagonist. He had been some kind of badass cyberpunk mercenary demigod kind of guy, killing people, hacking people, all kinds of upgrades and powers, but he traded it all in. Had his memory wiped, so he didn't even remember all the crazy stuff he'd done and who he'd done it to, and had joined this basically this monastic order, some kind of church. And eventually, though, it was time to get back into the game, get some cash. He was tired of eating noodles. And so he comes out, he's starting to try to find some jobs, get his kind of feet back under him, and he was jumped by a whole bunch of dudes, and he sliced the crap out of them. He's got a sentient or AI sword. Don't really know exactly what's going on yet. And yeah, cyberpunk goodness so far. That fight scene that we just finished up at the end of chapter 6 was pretty wild. And, now with chapter 7, it looks like we're getting a new point of view character. So we had Kentaro. Looks like we're going to get a new character, Sasuke. And so let's jump in. It's almost 3 minutes of blathering on for no reason. So let's go. 7. Sasuke wanted to sleep. He ran his hands through his long hair and tied it off with a rubber band. Fingers came back smelling like grease. He could feel his face muscles beginning to sag. He didn't know how much longer he could stay natural, chrome and yarn free, but he'd try. He hated the feeling of being exhausted. Everything had gone zombie mode. Hollow bones, distant voices, lost time. But the boss man kept him on call, and the boss man kept getting shot at. Just 3 more days, Sasuke thought, and I'm out of this for good. Jimmy Appanacci stood in the middle of a holovid projector. The sermon had gone on for a while this evening, but the man had dick enhancers to sell, and nobody liked dick enhancers like his congregation. Folks, I'm going to level with you here. The corporations, the government, what's left of it anyway, they've been lying to us. The world serpent is a lie. It's a hoax, a projection in the sky designed to instill in us a sense of fear. He wiped the sweat off his bald head. I get emotional when I talk about this, but I feel like I'm in Crazyville. I feel like nobody's hearing what I have to say. Do you think, knowing everything that we know about technology and knowing everything that we know about scripture, that a demonic snake would just show up out of the depths of space and circle our planet for no reason? Just out of the blue? No. I'll tell you what it is. It is a demonic ploy to separate you from your freedoms. If we think that we're going to die, that at any moment that giant monster can just unhinge its space jaw and swallow us whole, we won't strive for anything. We'll join a palliative society. Have you seen what these things have become, folks? Shamans, idolaters, mediators. They roam the streets just the same as any other gang of punks. Appanacci got serious. He called up the tears. They want you to think that we live in a dying world so you can forget your humanity. They want you so scared that you don't follow your goals. So you'll have no I was on a roll. Oh well. So you'll have no ambition. I'm saying, and you'll have to pardon my language, but fuck them. Fuck them and their demonic aims. I choose to live my life on a day-to-day basis. I started a small business, and look at me now. I live every day in the promise not of a dying world, but a living creator that wants what's best for me and my family. Ben, Appannacci's producer, wiped an honest-to-God tear out of his eye, whispered to Sasuke, "The man has a way with words. And part of my day, folks, is making love to my wife. Now, I don't want to get crass here, but since I headed down to Vlad Skinner Hospital and I got that work done," Sasuke tuned him out. Once he was finished with his sermon and his ad read, Appannacci stepped off the holovid platform and clapped his bodyguard on the shoulder. "How'd I do?" "Great work, boss." "You're damn right," Appannacci said. "God is good." "We've got a meeting with Oxcorp in about an hour," he said. "They said something about an accounting error on the salvation program." Jimmy's smile faltered, almost imperceptibly. Fuck them," he said. "I'm trying to see some titties." "It's important, sir. This is Oxcorp." "They can suck my balls. Take me to the women." Sasuke knew that this would end horribly for everyone involved, but he just had to hang on 3 more days. Once the contract was up, he'd walk, and Jimmy could sort out his own shit. So he said, "Fine. Titties it is." 8. How many days had he gone without sleep? 2? 3? How long did that take before the body started shutting down? How long before those effects couldn't be reversed? Sasuke knew that he could upgrade and take care of that, no problem. The pride he felt in being natty was the last thing he had to hold on to. No, he couldn't upgrade. He had to tough it out. Fresh life bustled, lonely half-dones chatting each other up, dancing to the steady mint-wave bass. Cyber skinners leaned out in horseshoe booth, hookah coals burnt out, cranking hog to 110% illicit women-presenting public bathroom holograms. Live men and women prowled the floor offering lap dances and anal sex for the purists. Sasuke saw them as animals. Well, not animals exactly, as that implied a back-to-nature stupidity. These people were burnt the fuck out. Humanity taken as far as it can go, more quickly than it could handle. He pulled at his bracelet. The last reminder of his old life. A simple bit of yarn, actual yarn, with the metal of a saint. Or an angel. He couldn't remember, and it had long since worn away. He felt the yarn going tight around his wrist, blood circulation cut off. He was back. He was human. It didn't matter what other people did with their bodies. He was in control. Jimmy was persistent. Earth to Sasuke. His employer needs pussy. Sasuke sighed. You got it, boss. 9. The bodyguard sat with his back turned to Jimmy. Jimmy had his pants around his ankles, really going to town on his date for the evening. The small room held 2 brown couches and a table. Karaoke screen on the wall. The instrumental to Sam Breen's I Want a Real Girl blasted from the speakers. Sasuke focused on the sushi and clams on the table. He didn't know how someone could eat the food from a place like this. Disco lights spun. Sasuke had a hard time keeping his back turned, as the couches were facing each other. An ad popped up on his HUD. It said, "Sure you don't want some?" over a spinning picture of someone's gaping asshole. He pushed it away with his mind. He asked himself again how people live like this. Jimmy continued to have sex, his t-shirt completely soaked through with sweat. With every thrust he said, "Cool, yes, right, cool, God, yes, awesome, wow." Sasuke believed that every man possessed a genius. Some were good with cars, others could thread yarn, others still could tinker around with reality itself in the wave. They could weave narrative in the rhizome. Others had a knack for dismantling the human body, whether they were skinners or migdocs or good old-fashioned heavies. Every man had a genius, and Jimmy's genius was in his ability to perform. The man could talk. Sasuke had never been under his spell, but the size of Jimmy's house and the bounty on his head made it clear that this man was influential. You wouldn't know it watching him anally penetrate a cheap prostitute, but Jimmy had the power to move people's emotions with his mind. Sasuke also believed that any genius sapped up the rest of its vessel's life. The mechanic who spends all day under a land chugger might be a terrible father. The migdoc can do wonders with yarn, but keeps a messy home. People could tinker with reality and still lose their shit in line at the grocery store. Jimmy was so good at what he did that the rest of his life was a huge blank space. The id ran wild. He drank, he smoked, he fucked, and that's it. At times, Sasuke found it harmless. Others, he just wanted to sleep. Sasuke wasn't sure what his genius was. He liked to paint. He liked to work out. He didn't want to believe that being swole was his destiny, the purest version of himself that he could be. He wanted to write a little bit. Writers and painters had it rough in Cyclone City, but still. Jimmy finally busted and collapsed on the couch. He pulled some tissues out of the box on the table and said, "My goodness." This man had millions of people hanging on his every word. The woman pulled her panties up and checked her HUD. "Payment went through. Have a good night, gentlemen." She left the room. Somewhere down the hall, a door banged open. Men's voices, many of them, shouting. "My friend," Jimmy said, "I believe there are men here to kill me. Dispatch them." "I'm on it," Sasuke said. He stood up off the couch and stretched. It sounded like a steel mallet dragged over a rib cage. Cracked his knuckles. Stood tall. 6'3", 250. An artist at heart. 10. He stepped into the narrow hallway lit fluorescent pink, unsheathed his 2 close combat weapons, a tanto and brass knuckles. The far end of the hallway was choked with goons. Nondescript for the most part, a few upgrades here and there, but this was bottom of the barrel shit. Jimmy had missed his meeting with the corpos, and this was a message. Show up, hash this shit out, or we get serious. The first goon came at him with a bat. He stepped out of range, felt the air displaced in front of his face. He cracked the goon with his knucks. Explosion of teeth and blood. The kid went down. He'd kill as few of them as he could get away with. The second brave soul charged. He sent the kid up into the ceiling, then down hard onto the floor. The rest happened in a rush. He ducked bats, redirected knives. He slashed tendons with his tanto, beat in faces with his knucks. They tried to rush him all at once. He had to get serious. He grabbed a victim and twisted his head. Neck snapped. One came at him with a bottle. Sasuke caught his wrist, wrenching it against the wall. The bottle broke. He wrenched back. The jagged edges embedded in the kid's neck. On and on this violence went. He slipped into a fugue state. The way some people got driving a car or sweeping the floor, Sasuke went there when it came to killing. He wondered if it had been this easy for Kentaro. When he was done, he had to guide Jimmy over the bodies of the goons. "Goodness," Jimmy said. "Do you think this is some kind of message?" "I don't know, boss," Sasuke said. "What do you think?" 11. Zuno charged full speed into the hooker, impaling her on his 40-point rack. He strained the muscles in his neck to lift her up into the air, still impaled, and felt the blood rain down. He felt like $1,000,000. Another bitch, this one dark-skinned, screamed and made for the door. Zuno was a blur, pinning her to the wall. The blue whorehouse lights gave her soft skin an even softer glow. The blood dripping down from her friend's dying body coated them both. He took his hard cock and rubbed it on her ass. She said, "Please." He couldn't believe it. He'd just used his titanium antlers to murder her friend in front of her, and this chick's pussy was wetter than an otter's pocket. He slid it in and got to work. The dead one rattled and gurgled from her perch on its antlers. Overall, the working girl was into it, which meant Zuno was not into it at all. As he thrust it harder, he took a nice fistful of the hooker's hair, then began slamming her head into the wall, over and over. First, her nose broke, 2 jets of blood shooting onto the floor, adding to the mix. Then more bone crunched. Zuno could swear she was trying to say something through a mouthful of broken teeth. It sounded like sea salt. Then she began to lose consciousness, her hands slipping down the wall, her face getting more and more concave. Finally, when he turned her cranium into a half moon, he let her go. He felt the euphoria of the killing start to subside, but he still hadn't busted, so he started jerking it. That's when the call came through. The room glitched out, no more dead hookers. He saved his progress. Back in his apartment, he took the Insta-goggles off. The hardware informed him that he still had 48 hours to finish the experience. He'd have to get back to it. He stood up off his rig and went to the fridge, cracked a beer, and felt the tears running down his cheeks. He wiped at them. Blood. He washed his hands in the sink, then finally answered the call. "Hello, Zuno speaking." The voice on the other line said, "What are you up to?" "Oh, just playing video games. What's up?" "Roof beers." "Root beer?" A sigh. "No, fool. Beers. On a roof. A party." Zuno didn't want to leave the house. "I'm not sure, man. I'm kind of busy right now." "Doing what? Jerking off?" "Dead to rights." "Nah, just gaming." "Well, quit jerking off and come hang out. Me, Carter, Argules. We're coming out of deflation right now, and we are fucked up, bro." Zuno looked longingly at his gaming rig. He danced back and forth in his cramped living room, the walls covered in posters for science fiction cartoons and bread metal bands, takeout boxes and burned down incense sticks and industrial-grade amphetamines cluttering his glass coffee table. I guess. Yeah, I'm in. Where's it at?" "Sending through, big homie. See you in 30. The details landed on his HUD. Santori. Not a bad ride. He checked himself in the mirror. His hybrid process was moving along well. A few more operations and he'd almost look like a deer. The zygomatic arch surgery had sucked ass, but it wasn't as bad as the nasal cavity elongation. And he already had the best part, the Pointech Premium upgrade. One command, and the titanium antlers sprouted from the sides of his head, 40 points in all. One step closer to realizing his totem. He suited up. Leather pants and a white t-shirt with a simple illustration of a peppermint on it. Vest loaded down with BE-7 incendiaries and extra clips for the black rig ASK-09. 50-pound gun. That made Zuno smile. A decade ago, he couldn't have carried 50 pounds of groceries up the stairs. Now he carried a cannon because he could. He gave his cat, Mickey, a pet on the way out, made sure she had enough food. He glanced at his apartment before he left. The elephant ear looked healthy enough. If he couldn't keep that alive, he would give up gardening forever. Overall, it was nice. He would need to clean when he got home, though. That reminded him. He jogged back to the coffee table, pushing aside the sundry clutter, picked up a straw, and yelled as much aha as he could. And he was out the door. Down the hall, overhead light flickering, reflected in puddles of piss and spilled booze. Debtors beating meat or leaned out in the shadows. Down the stairs, Loopy Lucy screamed and pushed, fully neuralinked into an experience. No money, no hope, but she sucked enough dick to keep a generator running in the stairwell of Fountain Plaza, running a childbirth sim on loop. Zuno didn't question how other people got off, but goddamn. He hit the garage, typed in the code to his stall, and rolled his bike out, tied off the black rig on the back, got on and started her up. The noise of the engine was deafening. He set off to kick it with his friends. 12. Zuno knew that he was slipping into psychosis. His MIG doc had warned him the last time they'd chatted. The upgrades were happening too quickly. 5 years is a long time in Cyclone City, but not enough time for a body to get used to all that yarn. At first, the glitches scared him. The shadow people sucked in particular. The hallucinations sent him hiding under the covers. Over time, he learned to enjoy them. After all, they were in the dominant of witchcraft. Reality tunnels were meant to be inhabited. The deeper down the rabbit hole you went, the more you accepted the illusions, the more you realized that they were just another flavor of reality. The whole thing was malleable. The physical effects sucked, though. Hacking up blood, heart attacks, restless leg syndrome. Zuno trusted the docs to keep him alive, trusted them when they told him that they'd seen the data. All you had to do was stick to it. A rite of passage. If the visions and the trauma on your body don't kill you, you'll come out the other side more or less normal. Every civilization develops its own initiation rites. The modern world had chrome and yarn. You had to go through a little discomfort to come out the other end a full-grown man. And you ended up with cannons under your skin, lightning speed, even titanium Pointec antlers. Zuno grit his teeth as he sped down the highway on his ZX-1. Massive bike, 3 feet tall, 13 feet long, IGF-1 spray-painted on the gas tank. He would get through it. He would be a man. 13. His friends lounged on the rooftop. Zuno waved to them, maneuvering around the cigarette butts and beer cans and broken dirty toys that once belonged to children who probably still lived in Geronimo Towers, all grown up. White paint summoning circles and dried melted wax from daily ritual mixed with crude graffiti, dicks and balls, fuck pigs 5 million dead, unreadable tags, a realistic paint pen sketch of a lounging cat. Tetsuo ran up and gave him a hug. Good outfit, skinny black jeans, a white Attica hoodie, gold chain. Glad you came, man. Happy to be here, Zuno said. I'm sure. Beer? He nodded. Tetsuo smiled. An eye-taker had torn his ears off a few months back, supposed to have been a routine job. Tetsuo had joked, I thought they went after people's eyes. Seemed to hear okay. It's a wonder what they can do with technology these days. I could do better. It's a wonder what they can do with technology these days. The holes were a bit unsightly, even with the surrounding chrome, but his friend carried it well. Zuno took a seat on a lounge chair and nodded a hello to his buds. Carter and Arguelles. I don't know how to pronounce this name. Maybe I should look it up. Should we look up how to pronounce Arguelles? It's probably a real name. JDO knows a whole bunch of more languages than I do. Oh. It's like the first how to pronounce Arguelles. Let's see. What? Arguelles. 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 I'm going to go with Arguelles. Why not? We'll go with that. Get my focus back over on my reader. All right. Where was I? Carter and Arguelles dressed wild. Carter had a big pink feather boa and star-shaped sunglasses. Arguelles had a full-on Viking look. Long hair, big beard, furs. They chit-chatted about this and that. Zuno liked to ask questions in social situations so that he didn't have to talk as much. "How's cleric life?" he said. "Can't complain," Tetsuo said. "Remember we had that big badass come in a year ago, all fried? He left today." His friend looked down. "Shame, really. I was learning some shit from him, for real." "Left? Why?" Some bullshit. No money. This fool thought that Wolf would just give him jobs. He doesn't understand the language. Too old to figure it out, I guess." "What's the language?" "Implication, bro. It's all implication. Wolf can't tell us what he wants to tell us. It's the same with any society. You've got to understand the subtext. This dude just thought that we would take care of the twisters, and that's it. So he bounced once the twisters dried up." I'm not sure I understand what's being implied." "That you gotta go out there and fuck some shit up," Tetsuo smiled, big white teeth. "It's not all going to be handed to you." "I see. We're a death cult, bro. It's all nihilism all the way down. That's why the palliative societies are the way they are. But not everyone understands that, I guess." "And you do?" "Me? Of course I do. Every day I do my part to make a dying world." Zuno looked around, thought about how to change the subject. The clerics freaked him out. Any religion had that effect on him. "Remember the last time we were here?" "Yo, that's why we picked this spot, for real," Tetsuo said. "We were kids, man." "Childhood," Arguelles said. "A different time." "You got that right," Carter said, touching the edges of his shades over and over. "Tiny little dudes, man." It had been about 5 years ago. Zuno liked to believe that he was still a kid, but he nodded all the same. "What about you?" Tetsuo said. "You're like a deer now and shit." "Oh, this stuff?" Zuno said. "Want to see something cool?" He deployed the Pointech for his friends. They cheered. "That is the sickest shit I've ever seen," Carter said. "Must have cost a bit," Arguelles said. Zuno got shy. "It did. But I'm out here. I'm making a little this and that." Tetsuo nodded intensely. Nobody on the roof objected to merc work, but between that, the hybrid mods, and Zuno's general space cadet behavior, they'd been a bit worried about him. "Hell yeah. Happy to hear that. Proud of you, bro. And, he searched for the words. "You taking care of yourself?" "In what way?" "Just, you know." Tetsuo tapped the side of his head. "Your brain," Arguelles said. "Your mental health." "Oh, that. Yeah, they've got me on some powerful neuroleptics." "You ever see things that aren't there?" Tetsuo asked. "Me? No." He did, with increasing frequency. "So explain this to me," Carter said, scooting in his lawn chair to get closer to Zuno. "The hybrid thing, I don't get it." Zuno wanted to go home. "Hey, don't climb up," Tetsuo said. "We're not judging you, bro. Whatever you want to do. But it's interesting. There isn't everyone in this city who's got a friend like you. Who's this far along in the process?" "I remember this dude always liked the nature vids," Arguelles said. "I've been getting into them myself lately. No thoughts, just pure experience. I go for a lion usually, or a bear. One of those has to be my power animal." "Totem," Zuno said. "It's your totem." "Right." They waited patiently. By this point, they knew that you had to let Zuno find his words. "It's about perspective. If you're a snake, you don't see a hole in the ground as a hole. It's a home. Creatures need homes. We're creatures. But living in Cyclone City never feels like a home. Animals are home wherever they are, and that's freedom, I think. I ain't gonna lie, Carter said, taking off his star-shaped sunglasses. That doesn't make any sense. It's not about your body, then? Arguelles said. That would have been my guess. Whew. Almost a half hour in now. Just about. Whew. A little break here. Ooh. We'll keep going now. Almost, we're 38% of this book. Holy cow. All right. Let's finish up. There's that, too. I'm stronger. I have cool antlers. There is the aesthetic value. They sat in silence for a while. They could all tell that the subject needed to change. Finally, Carter said, So, what's the pussy situation? 14. Zuno stood against a parapet, watching the mail carriers float and swerve around skyscrapers. An ad played on the building across from him. Too big to take it all in, but he got the message. Something was on sale for a limited time only. He looked down and wondered if he could catch every glowing neon sign on the way down. English, Cyrillic, Katakana, Hiragana, Kanji, Hangul. Tetsuo told Zuno about the job. They'd finished the case of beer. Carter and Arguelles lay on the floor, looking up at the world serpent circling the earth. At that time of year, you could see its sleeping face swallowing its tail. That's how I'm trying to be, Carter said, pulling his legs up over his head, pretending to suck his own dick. Just throating it, Arguelles said. He fumbled around for the hilt of his 7-foot sword, found the leather-wrapped handle, pointed it at the sky. I would do it too, brother. There has to be a mod for that. Without a doubt. Just get a flex spine. Or new hips. The flex series is pricey. Everything is pricey, Carter said. In the meantime, all we have is each other. Would you like to take my ass? I thought you'd never ask, Arguelles said. The massive man stood and stretched, green veins standing out on his neck and traps. He removed his cloak and unbuckled his pants. Zuno! Tetsuo! He said. You want in on this? Zuno had been lost in thought, too preoccupied with what his friends had said to think about sex. No, you two go on without me. Carter circled through his imagic options. You want a girl this time? I'm thinking we'll go classic on this one, Arguelles said. Bend over. Carter did as he was told. Arguelles pulled his friend's pants down and spit on his asshole. While his friends made love, Zuno attempted to get his head into a better space. Tetsuo clapped him on the back. Most skinners these days join the clerics or the knights to kill each other, like an outlet for violence, source of income. But what's weird is that the longer I do it, the more I get into the texts, the source. It feels good. It's kind of like a religion, I guess. You think? Yeah, true. I have this idea. Death is an important part of life. That concept stuck with me. In CC, for the right price, you can keep on living for as long as you want. I think that makes people fear death even more. So they either stay inside, ordering their food on the rhizome, watching Slime Time. Others became agents of death. Used to be, people died all the time. Now the Reaper has to get into our heads to force the issue. They listened to Carter and Arguelles go at it for a moment. Carter groaned and encouraged his friend. Arguelles sounded like a gorilla. Zuno nodded. I fuck with that. I respect what you're doing with the mods. I get it. The deer-headed man didn't believe him, but he appreciated the sentiment. He thanked him. I love you, bro. Missed you. Oop. Wrong character was saying that. I was wrong. This is Tetsuo talking, I think. I love you, bro. Missed you. Zuno couldn't say it back, just nodded. But on that note, I know you do a little wet on the side. A little, he made gun fingers. I have something for you if you want. Zuno's stomach started to hurt. He knew there had to be a catch to them inviting him out. He hadn't seen his friends in forever, but his friends weren't exactly the type to invite you out just for the shit of it. You're a fixer now? Everybody is. He sighed. All right. I'm listening. Arguelles howled as he busted. Carter said, Hell yes! Get the rest of my mouth! 15. Kentaro knocked on Micah's door. It's probably Mika. I think I've been saying her name wrong the whole time, so I'm going to switch to Mika. And it won't be consistent with what we got so far, but I think I'll be happier with it being probably correct with Mika. So we'll start over this chapter. 15. Kentaro knocked on Mika's door. The hallway felt sterile. Lights too bright, doors too plain. He wondered what he was doing here. The way he saw it, he erased his memory for a reason. Why try to remember what you went through so much trouble to forget? No, that's a line. That's a good line. I'm going to do better. Why try to remember what you went through so much trouble to forget? He figured he'd take Mika out for a cheeseburger or something. Or rather, she'd have to take him out, considering the fact that she took all his money. Maybe go for a walk by the Red River. And then when they got back, sure, he'd make a move. Why not? The door slid open. The door opened, and Mika stood in front of him, butt-ass naked. I missed you, she said. Kentaro's mouth hung open. Oh, I didn't mean... I thought we could just... She grabbed him by his shirt collar and pulled him in. The door slid shut behind him. It's been a year, she said, and I've been patient. No more small talk. Take off your pants. Kentaro did as he was told. 16. Mika's sheets smelled like lavender. The room lit up in pinks and blues, the atmospheric choices made by whatever advertisements played on the sides of the scrapers through the window. Kentaro moved his hips slowly. He'd become a virgin again. He buried his head in the pillow and sped up. Mika gasped and moaned. She put her hand on his chest and told him his heart was beating fast. Rolled him over and started to ride. She squeezed her left nipple and started to tighten up. Seeing how she took care of herself felt intimate to him. Even with all the flirtation, he hadn't thought much about what she'd be like in bed, but it was cool to know her idiosyncrasies. She got one for herself, then got one out of him. They lay in bed, dizzy, sweating. That was a long time coming, she said. How long? He stared at the ceiling. I told you, a year. No. How long have we known each other? How much do you want to know? She said. Just us. We go way back. We were kids. Tell me about myself. Which version? Kentaro shrugged. The Kentaro from a year ago was different from the little boy, different from the teenager. As a kid, I don't know. You were shy. I was shy too. Where did we meet? Our Lady, which is an orphanage. Kentaro nodded. Yeah, I thought so. That's something that comes back to me from time to time. Flashes of shit. I try not to remember too much because it's only a matter of time before I land on something bad. What do you remember? You. Mostly just you. I have a memory of us in a pool. A natural pool. We're surrounded by cliffs. I remember the way you look in the water. Why didn't you tell me anything? All those games I went to? Bill, the nutless dog, jumped on the bed. He sniffed Kentaro, narrowed his eyes, then curled up in a ball. Mika pet him. That's something that I can't talk about. It was part of the agreement. I couldn't tell you why you got the procedure. That's fine. We can leave it at that. He reached out to pet Bill and saw the dog's hair stand on end. What about you? Fill me in. It's strange having this one-sided relationship. You know everything about me, even more than I do. But I don't know anything about you. Mika scratched at the X at her cheek. I work, mostly. Sometimes I see my brother. Do I know him? She nodded gravely. Oh, yes. He's your best friend. Best friend. Cool. You two got into some crazy shit. Wonderful. And who is this? Where can I find him? You can look it up on the rhizome. I wasn't supposed to mention him. Or, I guess, your relationship to him. But here we are. Kentaro wasn't sure he knew how to do that. They talked on into the night. Mika told him about herself. She worked every day, made her money as a bookie. When she ran into trouble, she handled it herself. She liked to come home and watch holovids, period piece dramas, anything before the rhizome, before everyone was so linked together, so full of yarn. As she talked, Kentaro became more and more depressed. He felt like he loved her, but he wasn't sure which version of her he loved, or which version of himself was doing the loving. They slept. 17. Sasuke played cards and chugged a Dominator. His massive body barely registered all the B vitamins anymore, but he liked the cotton candy flavor. After the fight in the brothel, Sasuke had insisted on bringing Apanachi home. The whole compound went on lockdown, and he'd been keeping an eye on things with Ward, Apanachi's wife's bodyguard. Shifts? He said. Huh? Ward said. He looked how Sasuke felt. I'm going to nap for 15. Then you can nap for 15. Nah, I don't need to. Nah, I don't need it. He stood up and wiped non-existent dirt from his slacks. It's these couches. Too damn comfy. He did a few push-ups on the floor. Pain is weakness leaving the body. I'm going to sleep. Ward did jumping jacks. Whatever you say, pussy. Sasuke liked Ward well enough. The big man had a harder job than his. Susie was a mean little shit of a woman going schizo from too much yarn, too much chrome. She wanted to look like a swan. Sasuke had guessed a parrot. Money can't buy everything. Ward's problem was that he was boring. Girlfriend, no kids, a passing interest in sports. Ward only really loved self-improvement, which made him a great match for this line of work. It privileged people who said shit like, 400 hours, and hunted specially bred game in the wasteland when time permitted. Sasuke leaned back on the beautiful white couch in the Apanachi's beautiful white living room, the angle giving him a full view of the 20-foot-tall Jesus on the cross that hung over the mantel. He thought it was cool when people were into this kind of old-school stuff. Even cooler when you could make a shitload of money off of it. He rubbed his eyes. I really need a fucking break. Probably won't happen anytime soon, Ward had said. I'm not sure this thing is going to blow over this time. 3 more days. What? 3 more days and my contract is up. I'm gone. Ward turned red. You're not renewing? Dude, of course not. So you just leave him hanging? Absolutely. Ward shook his head. 0 principles. I have principles, Sasuke said. I hold the door for people. I'm kind to children and small animals. But Jimmy's not a child, nor is he a small animal. He's also not my dad. He's a psychopath. Did you miss the part where we almost died today? Dozens of fuckers coming at me with hammers and bats? I don't owe him shit, and neither do you. They were quiet for a moment. Sasuke said, and also, if I'd known the kind of shit this job would entail, I'd have asked for more money. He pulls this stunt now. That's not my problem, Ward. The man is made of money. All he's got to do is shell out some cash. Get the Black Knights in his corner. He'll be fine. But he doesn't want to do that. He wants to wring every last bit of value out of us. And when my time is up, that's the last bit of value he'll get. He closed his eyes. Now, if you excuse me, I'm taking a nap. He felt the warm embrace of sleep coming up quick. He imagined Ward sitting there across from him, stewing. Some people were born to do jobs. They took pride in doing them well. Good for them. Sasuke needed a break. The door burst open, and Susie wobbled in. Sasuke snapped awake, hand in his coat, gripping his tanto. He relaxed when he saw who it was. She'd gotten another upgrade. The body mod surgeon walked out behind her, gave Sasuke and Ward a little wave on his way out. What do you think, Ward? She asked. The big man's mouth had gone dry. He found the spit to speak and said, very swan-like. Susie had gotten the surgeon to elongate her neck to a solid 15 inches. Her terrifying bird head bobbled around, her black eyes blinking and her beak clicking. When I saw myself in the mirror for the first time, I could have cried. Have you ever heard the story about Leda and the swan? Yes, they both said, because she told it many times. I will have the power of Zeus. She pumped a wing in the air. The bodyguards nodded along, and with that she disappeared into the massive square footage of the compound. The room fell silent for a while. Ward spoke up. Can I tell you something, man? Of course. Just between you and me. Definitely. I can't lie anymore. I fucking hate this job too. And that's probably a good place to hold off for the night. Before we switch back to Zuno, whatever crazy shit this antlered motherfucker is coming up with. So, yeah. That section of the book was pretty messed up. I was pretty sure we were getting into some kind of dream sequence or VR game when we first met Zuno, because he was doing some really messed up stuff. I was hoping that was virtual, and even though it was virtual, it was still really messed up. I'm not really sure how I feel about having read that out loud. I hope my kids don't come across that. I don't know if I need content warnings now on this stream. But anyway, cyberpunk craziness in the future, body mods, and coming up, we'll be ready for chapter 18. We've got 2, 3, maybe even 4 point of view characters now, with Tetsuo being the second one, and now Zuno. Yeah, this is going somewhere about the halfway point. So, yeah, session 3 is in the can. Done. This has been God's Fair No Better, Book 1, Dying World by J. David Osborne. And until next time, this has been me reading books to you. Peace. Oh boy, I think we're back. I need to get my OBS set back up with multiple scenes so I can have, the splash screen waiting, countdown from 2 minutes till he goes live. But that's for someone with more time to mess with that stuff than me right now. So, what do we have? About to hit chapter 18, and I'm going to try to give a little mini summary to where we are so far. So if you don't want to hear that, and you want to actually go back and listen from the beginning, close your ears now. Hit escape. Do something. Because there'll be spoilers for chapters 1 through 17. So, Dying World is the first book of God's Fair No Better. It's a new cyberpunk series by J. David Osborne, just out from Broken River Books. And it starts out pretty cyberpunk 2077, video game I know JDO and I both played and enjoyed. And man, it really escalated about halfway through the third narration section for this cold live reading. I did not know what was coming. I was excited for this new POV character, Sasuke, that we started into. And then, I had fun with Sasuke and the man he is the bodyguard of. But then we got introduced to Zuno, and yeah, I was not ready for that. I was not expecting that, and I'm kind of I was kind of in shock reading it. And I think Zuno is about to get there. Just, I know I don't read ahead, but I just kind of see the words that are coming up. It looks like we're going to address some of how messed up Zuno's intro chapter was. He was playing a VR game that was really messed up. Meanwhile, Zuno is doing some really weird stuff to his own body with some hacks. And yeah, so we've got a lot going on, and I think that's probably enough talking. It's 3 minutes in again now. I always tell myself, do less intro, just go. So, session 4 of however many, we're not quite halfway through the first book. So, going to go ahead and get back to it. 18. The amphetamines wore off. Zuno sat in his apartment, filled with shame. He considered breaking the gaming rig in half. Rape games, he asked himself. Seriously, man? Who was he becoming? He flashed on his childhood. His parents had become batteries, selling their electromagnetic and psychic energy to currency miners. Zuno had a vague idea that they'd had normal lives before that, but the lure of being able to play video games all day had been too much to resist. They did the bare minimum to take care of him, playing with blocks, teaching him numbers, all the while eyeballing their rigs out of the corners of their eyes, waiting to get back to killing dragons or exploring lost cities. A different life, a better life, a life without Zuno. At dinner, he tried to tell them about what he'd learned on the hollow that day. Deep bags under their eyes, take-out boxes and filth piling up around them. By the time he was a teenager, his parents barely spoke anymore, to anyone. And look at where you are now, he thought. A deer man. A deer vid on the hollow when Zuno turned 9 changed everything. He heard the narrator say that herds of deer care for each other, that they loved each other. It had stuck. Did he have to go this far? The self-examination didn't go much further than that. He was a freak. He thought back to his outing with his friends, the way they'd asked him questions, the whole time holding back laughter. He knew that when he left, they dove in headfirst into the shit-talking. It's fine. It's not fine. He felt his face getting hot, squeezed his eyes shut. When he opened them, he was in the woods. A mist blurred the oak trees. He could smell the rain coming. Okay, I had to take a second to figure out that does is actually does, the plural of those. So let me go back and... Does flitted around him, the stag, as he ate bluegrass and kept watch. 2 figures appeared in the mist. Hunters. He signaled to the pack to run just before the arrow punctured his lung. He went down. He lay in the grass, panting. He looked up and saw his mother and father looking down at him. You should aim for the heart next time, his mother said. Dad took a knife out of his belt. I was aiming for the heart. Make it quick, she said. Sorry, friend, he said. He knelt down and put the knife to Zuno's breast. He shot up, wide awake, panting like he had in the dream. He rubbed his head. Mickey hopped into his lap. The cat purred, and he scratched her back. Focus. He had a job to do today. 19. Kentaro swung his bike out onto Severian Avenue and headed south. Chamorro Town blasted past him as he weaved around sports cars and delivery bikes. Most everybody was at work at this time of day, but you still saw corner pop-ups of punks here and there. Crossing the intersection of Sheridan, he saw 2 groups of punks, one on the northwest corner, the other on the southwest. They each had a setup, boomboxes, lawn chairs, coolers full of beer. They were laughing and shoving each other, and every once in a while they'd raise a pistol and lazily shoot at the gang on the other side of the street. Nothing connected. This was as close as you'd get to peace in Cyclone City. He had his pick when it came to getting into trouble. The world was his oyster. After spending time with Mika, he felt like he was getting back to normal. The time in the monastery helped. He learned patience, discipline, and how to control the weather. The brain wipe did not help. He made a note to himself to never do that again. Good or bad, a human being is meant to exist with his past. Wolf had been right to say that there were many people inside of Kentaro. The same is true for everyone. The only difference was that for most people, their multitudes share the same past. He got a message. "Special K, you left without saying goodbye." He replied, "Sorry, have to get to work." "Come back tonight?" "I will." As he sped over the Franklin Bridge, it began to rain. Puddles formed and commuters raised umbrellas. Kentaro pulled over and stood at the edge of the bridge, looking out into the Red River disappearing into fog. A woman excused herself around him, shuttling a little girl in rain boots. This was the first time in his recent memory that Kentaro realized that real people live in Cyclone City too. All he saw were the freaks, the death cult cum motorcycle club, the hybrid assassins and holovid addicts, the drunks and the psychopaths. There were normal people here too. He chewed on that information. A message came through. "Hey, Mr. K, Tetsuo here. I heard you were back on the hunt. Got a job for you that goes down tonight." "Hey, T, you're a fixer now?" "Everybody's got to do something." "What's the job?" "Meet in person. Chung's in Moldtown." "On my way." 20. Ward put on his dental helmet and turned it on. They listened to Appanacci scream at Susie from the next room. He'd done a good job of hiding his wife's hybrid fascination for the past few years. He'd give her a mask, make her cover up the feathers, but the neck was impossible to hide. As the two tiny robot limbs brushed Ward's teeth, Sasuke brewed a new pot of coffee. They were in their dorm room at the Appanacci Fortress, 2 cots, coffee supplies, and a weight bench. Sasuke hated blank walls, so he'd brought some of his landscape paintings from home. Vast empty plains, big blue sky, and a leucogranite cobblestone cannon. Yeah. And a lucogranite cobblestone cabin. He'd painted that 3 years before when he'd finally purchased a bit of property out in the wasteland. That was his cabin, his home. The painting calmed him. He used his time in the break room to recaffeinate and center himself. He lit a cinnamon apple candle. One day, he'd get out of the city and retire. It's what kept him going in the morning, the idea that there'd be a time that he could live out in the wasteland and marvel at its beauty from his very own porch. He'd make friends with the nomads and road warriors, or he'd kill them as they came by. Either way, he would have what he wanted: solitude. The other thing that kept him going was the bomb in his head. Every contractor in the city had to have one, especially for high-level jobs like protection. He'd been completely clean of upgrades to that point, but the rules of freelancing in the city required it. He'd groaned himself awake, and though the brain doesn't have nerve endings, he could swear he could feel the thing heat up whenever he took on a job. Every contractor said this. Every surgeon told them it was psychosomatic. Business was business, and too many people fucked around for too long, going back on contracts, missing deadlines, running out on their employers. The big money in town needed insurance, and over the course of a decade, bombs in the head became the standard. "If you want to make it out of here, that's fine," the powers that be said, "but how can we be sure we get what we want?" Through the walls, they could hear Appanacci's screams devolve into sobs. He cried a lot, full of passion. "I remember, before I took this job, I thought I might be a teacher," Ward said through a mouthful of toothpaste. He spit. "I went back to school, thought I might teach history. I got hired. First day of school, those kids scared the living shit out of me. 16 years old, and these little assholes were already on proto-yarn shit. Most of them had the ocular updates. I don't know. When I was a kid, We got to go through it without upgrades. Sasuke poured a coffee into a paper cup and blew on it. Why did you want to be a teacher? It's an excuse to talk about the things I'm interested in. Raised eyebrows. You? Interested in things? Oh yeah, I'm interested in a lot of stuff. Like what? History. Could have fooled me. Ward sat on his cot, massive hands clasped together. Something about that neck of hers doesn't sit right with me. Got me thinking. She's young. I wonder how young she was when she got her first upgrade. Have you seen the number of kids these days who think they're animals? None of my business, Sasuke said. Yeah, I think about those kids in that class and feel dread. Sasuke sat down across from him. Ward, come on, man. His brow furrowed. Sorry? Many kids these days want to become animals because of the yarn. Animals seem more natural. But the upgrade is the only lens through which they can see this progress. Upgrading to downgrade. The whole time not realizing the way out is to do nothing at all. Shit, get out of town. Look at a prairie dog. Yeah, still, freaks me out. You got scared by a room full of children? Teaching was definitely not for you. Ward got butthurt. This is why I don't talk to you. You don't talk to me because you have nothing of value to say. And as soon as you begin to say it, it's all kids these days and I worry for the future. Meanwhile, you were right there, able to do something, and you ran away to take care of a woman who thinks she's a bird. You ran away from children, abandoned them, and you think I'm bad for running out on Jimmy once my contract's up? Hey man, they weren't my kids. Let's chill out a bit. Abandon is a strong word. It's a strong word, and people do it every day. Little abandonments. They give up on people as soon as it gets a little tough. I liked you, Ward, I really did. I bought the whole tough guy military thing, but you ran away. From children. Ward realized he touched a nerve. He'd never seen Sasuke get that mad before. He said nothing, dropped it. Through the wall now, they could hear Jimmy and Susie going at it, really clapping cheeks. Now I gotta skip forward a bit because I don't know who's saying this line. It's Sasuke. Okay. So, I think he likes her as a bird. I think that adults like control more than anything. They think they've earned it. They put in the time, and now their kids have to put in the time. Then, just as soon as things get difficult, they bail. The kids grow up and promise themselves that they'll never be like that. So they change their appearance, start thinking new things, thinking that they're getting closer to their true selves, their wild selves, through their hybrid upgrades. They're turning themselves into their parents' pets. Jimmy literally has a bird he can fuck. Jimmy's not her dad. Sasuke gave him a look. Come on, Ward. Ward stood up. I'm going to get some fresh air. Write a book if you have so much to say. He left. The door swished shut. Sasuke frowned. He had written more than a dozen books, all hidden away on his hard drive. 21. Zuno parked his bike in the gravel lot. The rain had let up a bit. But the clouds still hung low and gray in the sky. He checked his jacket. A bad habit of his. If he'd lost a BE7, he'd know. He lifted the black rig off the back of the bike and strapped it to his back. He was early. Figured he'd scope the place out. The rodeo arena fairgrounds were already bustling with people. Mothers and fathers in full camo, tight blue jeans, halter tops. Zuno could smell the sunscreen and kettle corn. The grenades and the rifle didn't put him out of place. Most of the woods drinking beer on their tailgates or watching holovids in lawn chairs were packing. Very few had a gun quite as big as Zuno's. He stalked around pickup trucks and trailers. He didn't know what anybody would be hauling in Cyclone City, but the design had persisted for generations. Huge tires, flame wrap jobs, country music warbling out of intentionally analog equipment. These were people out of time. In their day-to-day lives, they worked and lived in the city. They saw the hybrids and the punks going about their depraved and godless business, but whenever they could, they stuck to the traditions of their forefathers. Beer, church, rodeo. Big men who inherited the hay-tossing genes, very little in the way of chrome. Yarn would be strictly verboten to people like this. They believed in keeping yourself natural, doing your best to appreciate the world as God gave it to you. The deer iconography wasn't lost on Zuno. Antlers on grills, a fake deer foot dangling out of a truck bed, shirts with deer in the crosshairs. He decided he wouldn't feel bad about this. 22. Kentaro showed up to Chung's first. He ordered a beer. The bartender instructed his drone to fetch the drink, held out his stumps. I have difficulty twisting the caps. No worries. Haven't seen you here in a while. I haven't seen this place at all. So it never came back, huh? No. The bartender sighed. The drone hadn't come back yet. These things are worthless, he said, groaning off his stool. The bar had seen better days. Half the light bulbs hanging from the ceiling had gone out. The pictures over the booths were faded, the frames cracked. Kentaro guessed they were from before hollows existed. Chung's had seen the city grow up around it. Lots of history in this place. Lots of dust, too. The bartender came back with the beer clutched between his two stumps. They make arms these days, you know. Ah, he said, I'd miss these phantom limbs too much. Feel like you'd get used to it. "'Kay, I've told you this many times, he frowned. I guess you wouldn't remember that either. Let me reintroduce myself. I'm Chung. This is my place. You can't fix everything. You can't even fix most things. Corpos have a solution for any ailment these days. Oh, you don't have arms? We've got new ones. We can rebuild you, stronger even. No thanks. I'll pass. Solutions to problems are often part of the problem. He pointed at the drone. Case in point. Tetsuo took a seat next to Kentaro. You're late, Kentaro said. Yeah, sorry. I was busy with your mom. Kentaro imagined taking this kid by the nape of the neck and slamming his face into the bar. He'd been experiencing violent impulses more in the past few days than in the year he'd spent at the monastery. Joking, dude. T held his hands up. You ready to do some work? I am. Good. You know, it's funny. You told me, 1 year from when you joined the clerics, to hit you up about work, right before you went under the knife. Tetsuo signaled for a beer. Why would I do that? I don't know. I've wondered about that. Did I say why I wiped my memory? Nah. You didn't say shit to anybody about that. Tetsuo took a deep drink. Moth-Eater wants Jimmy Apanachi dead. A Moth-Eater job. Big money. Kentaro's wrist tingled. Pay? $25K for a 5-day contract. Paid once his signal disappears from the rhizome. Sounds like a lot of responsibility. Why me? Why not? Tetsuo said. We've got a lot of killers out on this one. How does that work? Kentaro pointed at the bomb in his head. Contractually. Simple. Someone else gets him, they get paid. No harm to you. Vice versa, you get him, you get the cash, they live. And if nobody gets him? Tetsuo gave a little shake of his head. The fuck you mean? You all die. Kentaro didn't trust this kid at all. He dressed too nice. Let me ask you, you said $25K for a 5-day contract. Anyone go for a shorter timeline? Tetsuo peeled a bit of the label off his beer. A few did, yeah. Pros. What did they agree to? $35K for a 3-day contract. What if I could do it in 2? You can't. Well, maybe you could. They're organizing a raid on Apanachi's compound tonight. You tag along with them, you could maybe pull it off. Still, 3 days to be safe. 2 days. $45K. Way too far over budget. 40. No, and the 5-day contract is the best you're getting. You're basically brand new to this. He leaned in. Do you know how much being a fixer weighs on my head? You know how many good people I've seen get their fucking heads blown off because they couldn't make their deadline? You don't know me. You're right. I don't. I know who you used to be. If I was talking to that K, I'd say, no problem. 37K, 2 days, or I walk. At that moment, a shell seemed to go up around the cleric-turned-fixer. You'd bet your life on an extra 2 stacks? Absolutely. It's your funeral. Funeral, Kintaro said, approving the contract in his HUD. I don't have the money for a funeral. 23. Sasuke felt bad about his last talk with Ward. He found him in the third-floor living room, staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows. Hey, man, Sasuke said. Forget it. It's already memory hold, Ward said. Pain is weakness leaving the body. I thought I had been through enough pain, but still showed my weakness. Yeah, I get that. The pain is real. The sun dipped. They had a great view of downtown from where they stood. The Santori slums, Mold Town, Beaver Creek, the Tower of Harlots with a chunk in its side missing. Skyscrapers blinking to life as the world serpent became visible in the night sky. You ever wonder why we can only see it at night? Sasuke asked. Because it's probably not real, Ward said. I didn't take you for a non-believer. Ward sighed. Seems like a prank that got out of hand. Oxcorp said they sent a mission to engage it. Had some astronauts even walk on the surface. Oh, Oxcorp said it. Must be true then. Sasuke put a hand on Ward's shoulder. He flinched. Sasuke said, Man, I think we just became friends. He turned from the window and went to the kitchen. He popped 2 ice-cold chillers and returned to where Ward stood staring. This hulking dude, still in the dumps. He handed him a beer. Here, he said. I'm sorry, man. I just say shit. It's all good, Ward said. I don't have anyone to talk to, is all. And the bird situation. I got to thinking about the directions my life's been taking. Life is long. Not really. Not here. Yeah, life is short. Ward took a sip. You ever think it's weird that a weapons manufacturer makes beer? Common misconception. It's hard to find data that goes back that far. There's a wall. Everything gets scrambled. But it's out there if you ever want to tunnel slip. Turns out, they started as a beer company. What? Yeah, man. The beer came first. I figured it was marketing. A nicer, friendlier corpo. That doesn't hurt. So what about you? Ward said. What's your deal? Why are you here? I'm a desert kid. Parents died when I was young. Grew up in New Vegas. Always lived there. Thought I'd go west and try to cut it in L.A., but if you think Cyclone City is bad, that place is hellish. Trash fire. So I came here where I thought the playing field was a bit more even. If you're willing to implant the bomb, you're hireable. Do you have your own version of my story? Getting scared away from my dream by children? No, I don't. Ward got gloomy again. Brother, if we're going to be friends, you have to understand when I'm fucking with you. A crowd began forming at the gate. Looks like Oxcorp is sending in a squad soon. You think they'll get in? Nah. My only worry is that they'll drop a bomb on this place. This is over. What? A missed accounting meeting? Oh, it's more than that. Much more than that. Jimmy fucked with the wrong people. They're going to get him eventually. Just have to hang on. They stood in silence for a while, watching the hired guns assemble in the distance. You avoided my question, though. What's your deal? Sasuke paused for a bit. The sun had gone down fully now. In the distance, they could hear the hooting and hollering of citizens, the mobs roaming the streets, the ravers on their way to warehouses, the cabs honking through the gridlock, brown grandmothers selling roses to their captive passengers, the assassins and the hackers and the corpo thugs in a nightly dance with the palliative societies, McDucks, hookers, junkies. Kidnappers pulling celebrities onto skybikes, jacking them into a VR coma, taking them to an abandoned apartment building to dump them in an ice bath and strip them for parts and auctioned off memorabilia. The stink and sweat of the city, the impending threat of the weather beyond it, the lawless crush of desperate people gone hollow from the amount of yarn corporations like Oxcorp push daily. the mess of it all. My thing is, I look at all of this, Sasuke waved vaguely at the skyline, and I think about it, and I think maybe, just maybe, this isn't the way people are supposed to live. 24. Zuno was stopped. The entrance. Then we got a typo, JDO. I think I'm going to add an at here. Executive decision. Zuno was stopped at the entrance funnel to the rodeo at... If I could pronounce rodeo without thinking it's rodeo, that would be great. That'd be great, Sam. Zuno was stopped at the entrance funnel to the rodeo arena by security. A 7-foot-tall silverback, great mod, tough to get on bouncer money, put a hairy paw to his chest. The black rig can't come in. I thought this was a party, Zuno said. He noticed punks and cowpokes armed to the teeth nudging around him, getting nothing but a glance from the rest of security before they went on to the ticket booth. From here, Zuno could hear the announcer in the arena bellow, "Give it up for Carlos Castillo!" And even though he had no idea who that was, he wished he'd come here for the hell of it. A hot dog, a beer, and Carlos Castillo riding a raged-out bull. He could smell the cigarettes, hear the country music playing. Maybe he'd say, "Fuck it," and go lock down the black rig on his bike. The idea came to him so powerfully, he almost snapped his fingers. Right, the contract, the bomb. Silverback still hadn't answered him. Well, is it a party or not? I see people loaded the fuck down, and they've got no problems. Silverback pointed to the heavy machine gun strapped to Zuno's back. What you have there is a weapon of war. I've seen what that thing can do, personally. Served at the Battle of 5 Lakes. I saw good men turn into piles of steaming meat and bone. I'm all for self-defense, don't get me wrong, but you don't carry a piece of hardware like that unless you... How about $200? Are looking to have a great time. Silverback stepped out of the way and gave Zuno his billfold number. Once the bribe went through, he nodded and said, Be careful with that thing. It looks heavy. Zuno squeezed past him and purchased a ticket. He walked down the long entranceway, passing drunks in blue jeans and girls with their boyfriends' hats on top of their hats, and even a few hybrids, although most of these types looked upon them with suspicion. He felt like a football player on his way to the field. He looked up and to his left and right, saw a few old-timers clutching the red plastic cups from the cheap seats, eyeballing him hard. He didn't look enough like a deer yet for them to have the full hybrid prejudice, but they knew he looked fucking weird. He wondered how they handled the silverback at the entrance. More than likely, they didn't say shit. Up into the bleachers, he took a seat. The blue plastic chair groaned. The row went a touch concave. An old couple wearing matching t-shirts of a cartoon bull in a ninja costume shot him a look and held on to their snacks for dear life. Zuno decided to enjoy the show. He breathed in the smell of manure. He liked it. 25. Kentaro rode through the wide, nicely paved streets of Chisholm Woods. Traffic had been a bitch. He'd taken a pit stop at a noodle stand, watched people for a few hours. The clerics had taught him to look for signs. Synchronicities meant that you were on the right path. He hadn't felt anything since he'd walked out of the DWC office the day before. Even the limited time frame on this job didn't excite him like he'd hoped it would. Kentaro didn't want to die, but he was finding it difficult to care whether or not he lived. It felt mundane, flippant. He kept turning over what Tetsuo had told... Let me just... He kept turning over what Tetsuo had told him at Chung's. That he'd asked him to hook him up a year later. A suspicion arose. Something bigger was going on. He didn't trust that clean-cut little fuck as far as he could throw him. The moment that thought arose, a red X-Series hopped the curb. The wind of the passing vehicle nearly knocked him off of his chair. The driver sped off, but Kentaro's eyes flashed red as he caught the license plate. KSM 121. KSM, he said to himself. Kentaro Mika, who was the S? 121. 12 years and 1 year? That equaled 13. No, it wasn't the 13. 2 different spans of time. The screen behind the noodle cook switched from a commercial for kimchi to an ad for penis enhancement. Jimmy Appanacci stood in front of a cross, gesticulating, turning red, hollering. "Can you turn that up?" Kentaro said. The cook shrugged and fumbled around for a remote. By the time he found it, the commercial was over, replaced by an ad for Pointech antlers. He heard the announcer say, "Have you ever wanted to get back to nature?" before waving it away. "Never mind," he said. He had a bad feeling about all of this. His first job back as a merc, barely a memory to speak of, and the universe seemed to be warning him of something. If he'd been able to remember, if he'd been the old Kentaro, he would have listened. Lucky for the old K, sequestered away in the recesses of all that yarn, the new one had no such qualms. He got back on his bike and carried on. That had been hours ago. Now he was in range of Appanacci's compound. He spotted the crowd before he saw the gate. Tetsuo wasn't lying. They had sent an open call for this one. Serpents mingled with princes, some black knights, posse of universal vengeance, even a few clerics. Further back, beyond them, he saw off-duty CCPD, tanks, cruisers, mechs. He parked his bike in a free space on the road, got off, and went to mingle with the group. He looked up. Sentries on the wall. He backed off the crowd a bit. Once they got those gates open, he knew the punks and psychos would charge. He'd hang back a bit, wait for them to clear a path. And I think that's where I'll call off for tonight. Just a little bit over a half hour. I know I need to make more progress at a time, but again, it's past midnight again, and it's a school night / work night, so it's bedtime and then some. So, boy, it seems like everything's about to happen. I think Kentaro is about to have to fight Sasuke. Maybe we'll get a little more build up before we get there. I think they probably know each other from the past. We've got a few hints about that. So I expect a lot of bodies and body parts to fly in the coming pages. Yeah. So, Dying World. Hopefully get back to it tomorrow or the next day or sometime else soon. Until then, this has been me reading books to you. Peace. Boy, oh boy, we are back for, I didn't change the stream info. I think I can do it afterwards. This is session 5, believe it or not, of Dying World, God's Fair No Better, Book 1 by J. David Osborne. When last we saw our heroes, everything was seeming to converge on the mega church / penis pill Jimmy Appanacci HQ. We've got assassins coming. We've got his bodyguards. And I think this is where we go. We're on chapter 26. And that's it for the grand intro today. That's it. I just want to get going. I want to get a good half hour at least in here. I don't think that'll quite get us to the end, but we'll get close. And here we go. 26. The living room turned red. Sirens going off. Sasuke and Ward finished their beers, located the Appanaccis in their bedroom, and told them it was time to hit the panic room. "How many times is that this week?" Jimmy said. He pulled on his pajama pants and his shirt. "This is the 5th time, sir," Ward said. 5 times in 1 week. This is becoming a real problem. Sasuke bit his tongue. The news had gone out over the hollow rags. Jimmy Appanacci had been skimming big time from his church. To anyone in the know, and anyone that mattered, this was no big deal. Churches have been a racket since before the clear beginning of history. If he'd just been stealing from his flock, he could have kept it up for as long as he'd wanted. But he'd set up a company, Salvation, that he aimed to get off the ground. Jimmy had plans. Big plans. He wanted to be an Oxcorp, a Harakiri, a chiller. And to do that, he had to play his angel investors for everything they were worth. Bleed them dry, set up his operation, not a bad idea, really, selling Afterlife Heaven Sims on dodgy soul tech, and become the king of the city, maybe even America. Too big for his britches. So now, the big boys were sending heat his way, and they sent the stories of his low-grade grifting to the press. It was above Sasuke's pay grade. In a few short days, he'd wash his hands of it and move on. A new job, a new opportunity to save for retirement at his cabin in the wasteland. All he could say was he was happy Appanacci had spent all that money on security. It would take a small army to break in. 27. A small army gathered at the front gate. Had to be an alliance of corporate funds. This type of thing required a budget. About 100 punks on the front line. Cannon fodder, as far as Sasuke could tell. Behind that, the contractors waited patiently, weapons at rest, as they hid behind their bug-like mech armor. 2 tanks and 2 hovercopters rounded out the armada. This had the stench of CCPD all over it. They'd taken black spray paint to the insignias, barely even trying to cover it up. All you needed was a little plausible deniability. Did you see the letters CCPD on any of those clearly CCPD vehicles? No. Okay then. With his employer safely tucked away in his panic room, Sasuke rejoined Ward at the window to watch the show. The punks breached the front gate in about 30 seconds. Sentries on the wall opened fire into the space between the 2 gates. It was a massacre. The grunts for hire, red mohawks and open leather vests and gimp masks, all turned into a messy pile of limbs and gore. Sasuke winced. "This feels weird, doesn't it?" he asked Ward. His partner nodded. Appanacci's sentries were so busy slaughtering the grunts in the gap of the chamber gate that they missed the off-duty cops scaling the outer wall. Throats cut, abdomens impaled, Appanacci's men never saw it coming. PD had a direct line of fire on the second gate's sentries, too. The bug suits went into full fuck shit up mode. Cannons deployed from arm mounts, heavy machine guns readied and aimed. Sasuke tapped into his comm link. "Watch the wall! Watch the wall!" Too late. PD opened fire. Then they were through the second gate. "When should we be worried about this?" Ward said. "We'll see how they do in the Garden of Lost Hope," Sasuke said. "It's the most diabolical piece of technology I've ever seen. A living hedge maze that hacks deep into whatever human bits of you..." Let me do that again. "A living hedge maze that hacks deep into whatever human bits are left of you and pulls out your deepest fears, makes them real. In the pitch vid they showed, anyone who enters the garden usually ends up tearing themselves apart. Nasty stuff." Off-duty CCPD must have come prepared. Probably had a line on Neurashield tech. They weaved through the Garden of Lost Hope in under a minute. "Get the boss," Sasuke said. "We need to get the fuck out of here." 28. Zuno was once again slipping into psychosis. He clapped for the barrel tippers, booed when a writer got a no score. Before he knew it, he was getting on famously with the old couple, Earl and Tina, with them filling him in on the deep soap opera lore of the world of bull riding. "So, Carlos Castillo has a blood vendetta against Wayne Jenkins because he's convinced that Wayne rewired the programming on a BX-140 to be extra aggressive, and that goes against the league's regulations. All because Castillo humped Jenkins' wife at an after-party out in the wasteland. Zuno's vision began to glitch. He felt the flush throughout his body, pins and needles all over. He couldn't lose it now. "Terrible thing he did," Tina said, shaking her head. "Well," Earl said, winking at Zuno, "he's a guy. Am I right?" "Right," Zuno said. "He's a guy." He tried to think of what guys would say in this moment. Felt his mind go blank. He was in a forest, rainwater coming down. He could hear it against the leaves on the oak trees. He snapped back to it. "Jenkins' wife, she must have had a great pussy." Earl coughed into his hand. Tina said, "You are too funny." Zuno nodded slightly, pleased with himself. He was still human, for now. "And for the grand finale," the announcer said, "Wayne Jenkins will ride the Annihilator." Shit, Zuno thought. The finale. How long have I been here? He focused in. He'd seen the clowns do their thing, watched how they assembled at the far corner of the dirt ring. They looked harmless. Cowboy outfits and grease paint smiles, the usual. They were not harmless. Like most groups of people with a loose affiliation/interest in Cyclone City, baristas, card collectors, gamers, tennis players, rodeo clowns, they had decided to upgrade and become something of a gang. Zuno found the whole thing tedious. He spotted his target easy, Meyer Moon. He owed a shark more money than he'd ever make back on a rodeo clown's salary, even with the extra dirt him and his boys did on the side. A sad story. Moon's wife needed cancer treatment. He borrowed the money, couldn't pay it back. His wife died anyway, and now he had to as well. Zuno scanned the arena for obstacles. The bulldogger could be a problem. Most of the bulls here were chromed up, some even had yarn, and in order to rustle them, you needed the most jacked up, teetering on the edge of sanity motherfucker in the city. This chick fit the bill. Tall as hell, with so much chrome her skin reflected the big stadium lights. Arms and legs tree trunk thick, with a pair of auto-targeting shades fused to her face. She never moved unless she had to do her job. She never spoke, even when spoken to. Probably the only way to keep her mind from coming apart. Zuno was trying to get a read on her specs when he heard Tina say, "Oh, look, the clowns have come to join us." He sighed. 4 of them. One behind him, one in front, one on the left, one on the right. "What's a nice guy like you doing with a big gun like that in a fun place like this?" They were all armed with small pistols. Zuno took a deep breath. "Just enjoying the bulls." "You know," the voice said behind him, "we got tipped off that someone was coming to cash in on Moon's debt tonight. You're easy to make, brother." The word Moon sent him into a trance. His herd climbing up a grassy hill to look at the big, beautiful orb in the sky. This would be a good place to lie down for the night. A calm place. Finger snapping in his face. "Hey, man, pay attention. We're asking you to leave." The clown had gotten his face down close to Zuno's, whispering in his ear, "We're going to ask you one more time. Leave." He didn't want to be here, not just at the rodeo, but here, in this city, with these fucking people. He said, "I was having a nice dream." And then the shit hit the fan. 29. Zuno deployed his antlers. They went in one side of the clown's face and out the other. Earl and Tina got soaked. He spun to his left. The dead clown, still stuck to his right antler, swung with him like a chair on a swing carousel, his feet knocking into the attacker on Zuno's right, sending him tumbling down the bleachers. He grabbed the clown on his left by the cheeks and headbutted him, sending his eyeballs flying in different directions. At the same time, he kicked out at the one in front of him, his foot going through the man's chest cavity and out between his shoulder blades. The fourth, the one who'd been knocked down the bleachers, tried to run. Zuno unhooked his black rig and swung it up, taking aim. The clown was vaporized. Nothing but a big pair of red shoes left. "Not very practical for your line of work," Zuno said. He retracted the horns. The dead man fell to the sticky, beer-soaked floor. He wiggled his foot. He wiggled his foot loose from the other. Now he was free. Horns deployed once again. He stomped down the big stadium steps to the field and started spraying. 30. Kentaro entered the Garden of Lost Hope. The off-duty CCPD had made it through with no problem. The punks and psychos didn't get off that easy. An enormous man with a curved horn extending from the center of his head screamed and ripped a small punk in half. Kentaro snuck around the carnage, the punks tearing each other apart and fucking what was left. As he edged along the topiary maze, he bumped shoulders with a serpent. The assassin watched the carnage calmly. "What, Kentaro pointed. "What's going on with them?" "They're being reminded of their pasts," the serpent said. "Every mistake they've made, friend they betrayed, potential they failed to meet. It's all coming down on them all at once." The enormous man ripped the horn off his head and stabbed it into his own neck. "How'd the off-duties get through?" "Cops have plenty of yarn to keep them from ruminating on their choices. Tough to get the job done without it." "And you?" The serpent shrugged. "I guess I don't feel bad about much." A woman ran past them, engulfed in flames. "How about you?" "Me?" "I have a hard time believing that someone like you doesn't have regrets." "Yeah. So you've heard of me?" "Of course." "I've got to say," Kentaro put his hands on his hips and sighed, "it is so strange to be this famous without really knowing why." Right, the serpent said. "I'd heard a rumor that you erased your memories. Seemed out of character, but here you are, untormented." Kentaro saw a man put his own eyes out with his thumbs. Winced. "It's for the best." The men without guilt made their way out of the garden, and somewhere in the back of his mind, Kentaro had the inklings of a memory. 31. The crowd screamed, people running for the exits. Huge chunks of fencing confettied up into the night sky. The black rig hammered the field, potholes of dirt and explosions of blood and viscera. One after the other they fell, combatant and civilian alike. Cowboy hats and blue-jean legs and boots tossed through the air, arms and legs and heads rolling down the stadium steps. Zuno had gone full berserker. He was losing count how many people he was killing. 4, then 8, now 12, now... A bull charged him. 8 feet tall, 3-foot-long horns, a 1.5 tons of beast. Zuno cracked his neck and smelled the cordite hanging in the air. Everything sounded like it was underwater. He took aim. The bottom half of the bull began to transform. Its legs folded under, wires and machinery whipping out from its back, snapping in the air like a nest of snakes. The wires fused together, became solid, and then the bull was rolling on tank treads. So they did put yarn in these things. The bull had become a tank. The organic head brayed and snorted. Its front hooves, now Gatling guns, spun fast, and Zuno had to take off at a sprint to avoid being torn to pieces. He fired a BE-7 round at the tank bull, taking out one of its turrets. The bull righted itself and continued firing. Zuno closed the gap quickly, got behind it, and started punching at its throat. The bull wailed and thrashed, but the tank treads kept it largely immobile. Zuno kept punching until he'd gotten through the meat of the thing's neck. He reached in and pulled its throat out. He dropped a fistful of stringy gore into the dirt and saw the bulldogger sprinting at him out of the corner of his eye. She fired dozens of rounds at him. Most of them connected, glancing off the chrome, but he knew he'd be feeling that in the morning. She came at him full speed, kicking up a rooster tail of dirt behind her, all muscle and metal, eyes hidden behind triangular geoframe sunglasses. With how badass this bitch was, he knew the antlers would be useless. He retracted them, and when she was within reach, used her momentum to send her headfirst into the gaping hole he punched in the bull's throat. She was stuck. She wriggled to get out. Zuno took a step back and took aim at her neck. He emptied a whole clip until her body fell away, the head still stuck inside the bull. The stadium was quiet now. He had the presence of mind to know that the cops would be there soon. Focus, he thought. He had to calm the berserker inside of him. He found his target kneeling by the destroyed fence. Meyer Moon held Wayne Jenkins's torso in his arms. "This was going to be his big night," Moon said. "He was going to get a little bit of pride back. He'd never been the same since Carlo fucked his Zuno ripped his head off and tossed it aside, casually. The bomb in his head cooled off. He saw the note come up on his HUD. Contract fulfilled. Depositing funds. Now, to get the fuck out of here. The click by his ear sounded louder than his black rig. Silverback said, "Weapon of war." "Hold on a second. I told you that was a weapon of war." He felt the barrel at his temple. "I need a way out. I've seen so much in my life, but this, you've killed so many people. Innocent people, men, women, children. Things like this make it hard for me to sleep at night. People torn apart, mayhem. I have seen atrocity after atrocity. $2,000. That I am dealing with one day at a time." Silverback lowered the gun. "There's an employee exit. This way." 32. Sasuke and Ward opened the 5-inch thick panic room door. Jimmy sat on the edge of a California King bed, a small Bible open on his lap. The panic room had more amenities than the blah blah blah. Where was I? The panic room had more amenities than the entire floor devoted to the security detail. Massage shower, sauna, red light therapy, jacuzzi, state-of-the-art exercise equipment. 3 TVs for some reason. And in the corner of the room, an 8-foot-tall bird cage, currently covered with a large silk bedsheet. Sasuke said, "Time to go, boss." Jimmy put the Bible to the side and walked past his security, out into the hall. "I knew this day would come," he said. "I just expected it to come much later." He tapped a code into a pad on the wall. A section slid back, revealing his escape route. A dark, low-ceilinged hallway that led to a service elevator. I used to use this to sneak friends in." He paused, deep in thought. "So many great experiences." He sighed and wiped the sweat off his forehead. "It always gets so hot in here." Jimmy flicked a switch just on the inside of the hidden panel. The lights flickered on, and a ceiling fan slowly began to turn. "How far have they made it?" he asked. Sasuke checked his updates. "Past the final gate. They're currently pinned down by the turrets." "How long do we have?" "The way they're cutting through our defenses, 5 minutes, max." "All right," he said. "Let me go wake up Susie." Back in the panic room, he gently rapped on the covered birdcage. "Dear, darling, it's time to go." No response. Sasuke thought, do swans need birdcages? Jimmy hit the cage again, this time harder. "Wake up, Susie. Dangerous men are on their way to kill us." Still nothing. "She really commits to the bit," he said. He whipped the sheet off the cage. "Susie, wake the fuck up!" His wife's beady black eyes snapped open. She made a honking noise, hopped down from her perch, and bolted out of the cage. "Catch her!" Jimmy said. Sasuke and Ward didn't react in time. Susie slipped past them, running in circles around the living room. "She's in full bird mode!" Jimmy yelled. They heard explosions down on the first floor. "We don't have time," Sasuke said. "Get a hold of her." But Susie had upgraded. Her reflexes were quick, and her mind was gone. She leapt over couches and ran up walls, flapping her wings and squawking. Then she ran down the secret passage. By this point, the fan had turned on full blast, and though Susie had gone full bird mode, she hadn't yet adjusted to the length of her neck. It happened in the blink of an eye. Her head got caught between the blades, the neck snapped, and Susie got lifted a clear foot off the floor, her long swan neck knotted up in the fan. The three men were quiet for a second. Jimmy screamed, "No!" And the bomb in Ward's head gave off the briefest of beeps, and with little ceremony, his head split open like a watermelon with one too many rubber bands around it. Sasuke winced and shielded his eyes from the spray of bone and brain. Ward had failed to protect his client. His contract had been severed. 33. Silverback led Zuno through a maze of dimly lit tunnels under the stadium. "This will take you to the employee parking lot. I need to get to my bike." The gorilla grunted. "You're not getting back to the bike." "I like that bike." "You're going to like being alive more, I think." "Maybe." Silverback threw his hands in the air. "Don't you fuckers have some kind of strategy for things like this? Planning? You couldn't hit him with a sniper rifle from a distance? Poison his beer? Hack into the bull and have it yarn out? Could have made it look like an accident." Zuno thought for a moment. "Those are all good ideas, actually." "So you don't think about this kind of thing at all?" "No, I operate on vibes." Silverback turned and slammed Zuno up against a wall. "You're making this harder than it has to be. I don't want to kill you, but I will. You have to promise me that you won't ever do something like this again. If I see you on a hollow going on another rampage, I won't be able to forgive myself." "Do I know you?" Silverback slowly let him go. "No, you don't." "Then why would I promise you anything?" The gorilla led the way. "This society is beyond the pale. I'd be surprised if this even makes the news tomorrow." They came to the employee exit. Silverback said, "Head straight out. There's a service road over there that leads to I-35. "I've got maps." "Right." Zuno turned to leave. Silverback stopped him one last time. "Seriously, man, listen to what I'm saying. This is no way to live." Zuno had no intention of thinking about it. "I will." He opened the door. Silverback caught a dozen rounds to the face and neck. Zuno felt the pressure of the explosion. He flew back down the hall, his legs gone, replaced by a slurry of guts and bone. CCPD mechs swarmed the tunnel. "Suspect located. Awaiting orders." The last thing Zuno heard before the lights went out came over the bug mech officer's radio. "Destroy the body. Keep the head alive." And I think that's where we'll stop for tonight. I think one more session will get us to the end, and that'll be fun. I do have a second book lined up, so I'm going to keep reading at least one more. I don't know if anybody finds this amusing or not, but until then, this has been me reading books to you. Peace. All right, man. This is it, the grand finale of book 1 on this stream. Take it in. Wow, man, those lights got bright for a sudden there. That's better. All right. So here we are. Session 6 of 6. They're all pretty short sessions. We'll see if I can do longer ones another time. But wrapping up, God's Fair No Better, Book 1, Dying World by J. David Osborne, we've got Kentaro, the incredible, legendary assassin who joined a monastery and had his memory wiped intentionally. We've got Sasuke, a pretty capable fighter who's a bodyguard for hire. And when last we were reading, we had Zuno, who's a kind of really weird dude with really weird fetishes, who's turning himself into a kind of cyber deer creature. And he's just murdered a whole rodeo full of people. And just as we thought he was going to escape, he's been captured. So, we are ready for the home stretch. And not much else to say. Oh, my show notes for today. 2 weeks. 2 weeks is the amount of time. Oh man, look at that terrible amount of bookmarks showing. Yeah, well, can't fix that now. The 2 weeks is the amount of time that Twitch will keep an old recording before it deletes it. And it's been more than a week, I think 10 days, since I last was able to find even a half hour to sit down and do this. And luckily, though, episode 1 is exactly 2 weeks old. So I got everything downloaded. So don't worry, this magnificent opus of reading will not disappear forever. There's at least a copy on a hard drive until that's also gone, and we're all gone. Anyhow, here we go. Let's hit it. God's Fare No Better, Book 1, Dying World, by J. David Osborne. 34. Kentaro and the Serpent stood in the foyer of Apanachi's compound. The place bustled with police activity. Pneumatic drill sounds of mechs clomping up and down the stairs, SWAT-style humanoids clearing rooms. This was a bust, Kentaro said. We would have never had a shot anyway. Not with that attitude, the Serpent said. They used all those mercs as cannon fodder. It was that or drop a bomb on this place. Bombs are expensive. The Serpent gestured at the carnage, blood up and down the walls, intestines draped over the banister. Every inch of the floor covered in mercenary insides. Nobody here is getting paid. Kentaro nodded. You have a point. Let's take a look around. We find anything, keep it on the low. Split the job 50-50. Kentaro agreed 50-50. They peeked into bedrooms, looked under pool tables, checked kitchen cabinets and walk-in closets, ran their hands along the walls looking for hidden passageways, scoped the attic. Nothing but dust. Half of this place isn't even being used, Kentaro said. Ostentatious. Rich people don't know what to do with their money, said the Serpent. Tale as old as time. That is a big-ass birdcage, Kentaro pointed. What kind of bird do you think that's for? The humankind. The Serpent peeked around a corner. Check it out. Some kind of barracks. Kentaro checked the scene. Weight bench, coffee maker, paintings on the walls. There's more personality in this room than in the whole rest of the house. Good paintings, the Serpent said. Kentaro studied them. A beautiful blue sky dotted with birds, a lake with a long wooden dock, a pig jumping out into the water, and finally I gotta look up words, JDO. I gotta look up words. And he's probably invented this. Luso granite or Luco granite. I'm gonna go with Luso. Try that. And finally, a Luso granite cabin. Something twitched in the deep recesses of Kentaro's mind. He was there, at the cabin. He knew it. He snapped a picture of it with his ocular scanner and filed it away. When he turned to leave, the serpent blocked the door. "You found something," he said. "I was looking at the painting," Kentaro said. "I like the pig." "Do you know why they call us serpents?" "I'm sure at one point I did." The serpent pointed at the metal screws in his cheeks. "I take these bad boys out. My jaw comes unhinged, and I swallow people whole." "The physics of this don't make much sense to me." "Tell me what you saw, or you'll be finding out firsthand." "Okay, look," Kentaro said. The vanishing twin flashed, and he cut the serpent's legs off at the knees. While he was still falling, the twin flashed twice more, and both of the serpent's arms were gone. He screamed and wriggled on the floor. "Now you look like a serpent," Kentaro said. He made for the door, paused, turned back. "Hold on a second," he said. Then he stepped up to the limbless torso on the floor. "I'm gonna fucking kill you when I—" Kentaro put his sword through the back of the serpent's skull. 35. Appanachi had problems, but at least he didn't have rats. Sasuke had half expected there to be bright lights and bullets waiting for them when he forced open the hatch. Instead, he found his key star idling. Cranked the ignition and turned on the heated seats. He valued the small pleasures in life: modest car, comfy ass. Sasuke drove Jimmy Appanachi out of town. He told the man to stay down as they made their way through the gate. Finding Jimmy was high on the corpo's to-do list, but they hadn't greased the border patrol yet. Jimmy stared out the window at the shit pile, the 1,000-acre landfill that surrounded the city. "That's a lot of trash," he said. It was the first time he'd spoken since their escape from his compound. "We're going to need to lay low for a while," Sasuke said. "Can't they come up with a better place for all this trash?" Jimmy always did this in a crisis. Sasuke had been there for his wedding. The preacher had been nervous as hell. He couldn't admit that, though, so he fiddled with the windows in the limo on the way to the chapel. Complained about the cup holders. Tried to get his tie loose. Although, I guess I never thought about it. All this trash, and Oxcorp can't launch it into space? Chuck it at the world serpent? He laughed. Can you imagine? Just pelting that thing? That's probably why they don't do it. Don't want to wake it up. You've listened to my sermons. You know it's fake, right? Funny story. I just had this conversation a few hours ago. Ward thinks it's fake? Thought. Right. Jimmy frowned. Shitty thing that happened to him. Yeah, and I'm sorry about Susie. Jimmy waved him off. She'd been a bird for so long I couldn't remember the woman I loved anymore. You can't make love to a bird. You can't cuddle one either. They're wild animals. His boss was never one to talk about his feelings. Sasuke saw him as a petty tyrant for the most part, but the complete dismantling of his life seemed to have softened his edges a bit. He allowed himself to feel pity for the man slumped in his passenger seat. I need to get my hog slogged, Jimmy whispered at the window. All due respect, Sasuke said. You've got two of the most powerful corporations looking to kill your ass. And if you die, I'm getting the ward special. So I need you to focus. Corpos, Jimmy scoffed. Man, I'll tell you something. I've been in this business a long time. My daddy was a preacher, and his daddy before him. This shit is in my blood. Make no mistake, our faith is real. And every day of my life, I try to bring that faith and hope and inspiration to the masses. All through America. They read my books. They watch my vids. My inbox is full of people thanking me. I know you look down on me. I can read you like a book. You think I steal from people, but I don't. I make an exchange. It's low effort. It's high resonance, Jimmy shot back. You're not getting my point. I never stole a dime from those people, but if I did, let's say I did once or twice, nobody bats an eye. No one minds if some old-timer sends you her life savings because it is received in the spirit from which it is sent. A gift. Thank you. Boss, you sell these people bottled magnesium. 80% of our population is magnesium deficient. You tell them it's a blessed mineral. It is blessed. I bless it. He pointed a finger at his face. Preacher, man of God. Once again, you're trying to get me riled up. No one cares if I'm giving gifts or sell blessed minerals to God's children. But you fudge one small slideshow report to those suited fucks and they send in the goon squad. I'm by your side damn near every minute of the day. You defrauded those people. I misjudged. You said to me, I'm taking these boys for everything they're worth. He waved a hand. You're not hearing me. Sasuke turned on the radio. KFX 107.9, Ricky and the Bitch. Sasuke liked these guys. He turned it up. Ricky here. You are listening to Hawk Power's new single, I've Got a Secret. Love that. Just love it. What a record. Hey, bitch, have you got any secrets? The Bitch. Tight-lipped as always. That song moves from number 15 to number 8, off the strength of their controversial new holovid featuring the Black Knights posse of Universal Vengeance in a rare turn as backup dancers. Never thought I'd see the day. Keep on rockin', Hawk Power. In the news today, clashes in Dreampool leave 38 dead. CCPD has requested anyone with leads on the shooters to contact them immediately. This most recent massacre brings the day's death toll up to 247, beating out last year's one-day shootout record. We don't take bombings into account. Heh. And our favorite punching bag, Jimmy Appanacci, is back on the front pages. You remember this scumbag, bitch? The Bitch. Right on the money. Apparently, Cyclone City's resident pill shiller and retirement scalper is on the run after the CCPD raided his compound to serve a warrant. According to a statement from Chief Argoyes, Appanacci is wanted for 7 counts of fraud. I guess his days of preaching the gospel are over. Sasuke turned off the radio. They drove in silence for a while. Finally, Appanacci spoke up. You left that on a bit longer than you needed to. No, Sasuke said. I don't think I did. 36. Kentaro ripped down the streets of Cyclone City, weaving around cars, pushing his bike as hard as it could go. Neon signs flashed by in a blur. Wind whipped his eyes. He blew through red lights. Called Tetsuo. Hey, Special K, what's up? I need you to do something for me. I'm sending a picture through. It's a cabin, a painting on the wall at Appanacci's place. I need you to download it and send it to the rhizome. You have access to location software? Yeah, don't you? Just maps. He sent the picture through. A semi-truck pulled out into an intersection. Kentaro hit the brakes, the bike going up on its front wheel. Slamming back down. Fucking move, he yelled. What's the point of this? Tetsuo said. It's a cabin. I've got a feeling. I know that place. I've been there before. So? Just fucking do it, man. The semi cleared the road. Kentaro punched it. He ripped through the border, weaving around the patrol trying to slow him down. Out into the wasteland. He knew he was moving in the right general direction. Tetsuo came back. Okay, I found it. Sending you its coordinates. The info dropped into his maps. All right, thanks. Is this about Appanacci? Because you're running out of time. Kentaro hung up and gave the bike more gas. He headed west through the shit pile, then turned onto the potholed mess that led to Sasuke's wasteland retreat. 37. Tetsuo sent a message to Mika. 38. Sasuke started up the generator behind the cabin. The world serpent lit up the sky like 100 moons, its scales and feathers rippling. He took a deep breath of the air. It smelled like dirt. Ooh, a lot of reading. Nature, he thought to himself. He could get used to this. Jimmy shivered in the night air. "This sucks," he said. "Shut up," Sasuke said. "Inside." He'd kept the interior of the cabin neat. No squatters this time. A cot, a stove, a toilet. A nice rug to tie the room together. He thought it was the coziest fucking thing he'd ever seen. "This sucks too," Jimmy said. Sasuke hit him in the mouth. "Lay down." Apanachi spit a tooth onto the floor. "The fuck?" "You don't deserve any of this," Sasuke said. "I'm not letting you disrespect my happiness." Jimmy sat on the bed and crossed his arms. "I've got a line on a fixer who can disappear people. Set up a meeting in a few days from now." Then I'll be out of your hair and you can enjoy," he grimaced, "your happiness." "I look forward to that. Until then..." He paused. He heard something coming. An engine. 39. Sasuke ran onto his porch. A bike approaching. The headlight getting brighter and brighter. He walked slowly out onto his front lawn. Dead grass crunching underfoot. He slipped on his brass knuckles and unsheathed his tanto. Blah, 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 blah. He slipped on his brass knuckles and unsheathed his tanto. The light got brighter. Brighter. A figure leapt from the bike, flipping in the air, coming down with his blade glinting in the serpent light, ready to strike. Sasuke stepped to his right, felt the breeze of the katana barely missing him. That's when he noticed who was doing the attacking. "Kentaro!" The attacker struck again. Sasuke ducked. "Kei, wait! Hold on! Stop!" He dodged the persistent attacks. "You have to remember something," Sasuke said. "Dude!" The blade sliced through his left bicep. "Fuck!" "I don't have time," Kentaro said. "Where's Apanachi?" "He's inside, but wait!" The katana got him again, good this time, on his outer thigh. He backed up out of range. Kentaro analyzed him carefully, trying to remember. "If you give me 5 minutes," Sasuke said, "I'll explain all of this to you. You're being played. Someone's fucking with us." "Being played? How?" "How long have you been back in this line of work?" "First job." Fuck, man. Your first job back, they send you after one of my clients? Doesn't that seem like too much of a coincidence to you?" Kentaro shrugged. "I don't know who you are." "Yeah, right, of course." Sasuke felt the blood running down his leg. His arm screamed at him. "Come inside. Look, no tricks." He tossed his weapons into the grass. Kentaro weighed his options. He attacked again. Sasuke snatched his weapons up off the dirt. Sasuke blocked the twin with his tanto, dropped it. The sword came down onto thin air, and he grabbed Kentaro's wrist with his free hand, boxed his jaw with the brass knuckles with the other. Kentaro planted ass in the grass, spit up blood. Sasuke kicked the twin away. "Now, listen to me." Kentaro was so tired of this shit. Everyone in Cyclone City knew who he was except for him. At this point, he wanted answers. He nodded at the cabin. "Apanachi in there?" "He is." "Look, whoever you are, I don't have a whole lot of time. If he's still in the rhizome in the next 24 hours, well, you know." "A day, huh?" "Give or take." "Come inside." "I'm not going to do that. You have something to say to me, you can say it out here." Sasuke held out his hands, looked left and right. "Okay, stick with me for a minute. You and I go way back. We grew up together." "Bullshit. You, me, and my sister." Kentaro closed his eyes for a second. "God damn it. This whole memory thing, you didn't do it to yourself." "I'm listening." "You made a lot of money at the height of your career. Pissed a lot of people off." "Who did it?" Sasuke shook his head. "I have a few ideas, but I need the leverage. You understand." "Wolf?" "He's one of them, for sure, but there's more." "Okay. That I'll tell you once we had this situation sorted out. Why didn't you tell me this a year ago? I spent a fucking year meditating, learning about shit I don't care about. Fucking meditating. You're saying there's more to this, that there's some kind of conspiracy, and you're supposed to be my best friend. Why didn't you stop them? He spit more blood into the grass. The people who did this? Me, Mika, everyone I know and love would have been disappeared, real quick. Kentaro took a deep breath. He looked out at the world serpent. He looked out at the world serpent, rising up from the horizon of black rock and dead windmills, up into the starless sky, looping all the way to the other side. He had to be in a nightmare. He wanted to wake up. But more than that, he wanted his fucking money back. What about my contract? Kentaro said. Hard to get to the bottom of things if you don't have a head. Sasuke glanced back to the house. He saw Jimmy peeking through the window. He lowered his voice. Ask for an extension. My contract is up in a day as well. Once it's up, well, you know. An extension? There are no extensions. They hype that ledger up like it's God. Like... There are extensions, Kentaro. Call your fixer. Trust me. Kentaro mulled it over. He said, Stay right where you are. I'm right here. I'm fucking serious. I don't know shit about shit, but something fucked up is going on here. I agree. Kentaro stepped back a bit and called Tetsuo. The fixer picked up. Hey, bro, you get him? You know I didn't. Just talking. What's the deal? I've got Appanacci pinned down. Fuck yeah, man. Kill his ass. It's not that simple. I need an extension. Silence. You know we can't do that. Come on. One more day. Dock my fee a bit. Dude, it's a rule. It's the rule. The number one rule. Nothing you can do? Another pause. Look, if you get an extension on this contract, and this is a one-time thing, never again, but if you did, I'd have to take away your whole fee. Kentaro whispered. The fuck? The entire fee? It's that or your head, big bro. The killer sighed. Fuck. God damn it. All right. Give me a second to think about it. I'll call you back. He hung up the call, turned back to Sasuke. What did he say? Just hold on, Kentaro said. He walked out into the field. The cool night air gave him goosebumps. He thought about it. If this guy really had the answers he was looking for, then maybe it'd be worth it. Just this once. He'd lose the 37K, keep his head, and find the people who'd stolen from him. It'd be like spending money to make money. He could get his life back together. The yarn started squirming in his brain. He closed his eyes, and he saw himself as he once was. A death artist. The scariest motherfucker in Cyclone City. Whoever had gotten one over on him would die. He would return to his former glory. And he sure as shit wasn't going to start off taking a loss like that. 40. He turned back to Sasuke, the man who claimed to be his childhood friend. Pick up your weapons. What? Why? Just pick them up. Sasuke bent down, and Kentaro charged. He bowled his opponent over. Almost to the end, and here I am just messing up left and right. He bowled his opponent over and snatched the vanishing twin from the grass. It glowed red, the baby hands grasping at the air. A sad song floating through the night, barely perceptible. Sasuke picked up his tanto, slid on his brass knuckles. Kentaro said, There wasn't anything they could do. Sorry. The warriors set their feet, raised their weapons. This doesn't have to be this way, Sasuke said. I'm afraid it does, Kentaro said. They charged each other. A shot rang out. Up next, A War in Heaven. What? Cliffhanger? Cliffhanger? Oh, JD. Oh, you sneaky man. So yeah, I guess book one is a hint. There are more books coming, and boy, does this one end in a I don't know. You can't call it a Mexican standoff. There's only two of them. Well, no, there's a third person with a gun, but they're not standing off. The shot has already happened. So we got two sword duelists, and someone has brought a gun to the sword fight. So, all right, man. Let's go ahead and read this back matter acknowledgments. Thanks for reading this first installment of God's Fare No Better. I've set the challenge for myself to write 10 of these, so I hope you'll join me for future installments. We've got the world set and all the major characters, so far, introduced. So we're rolling. I have 2 particular books in the series I'm eager to write, though I don't know where they'll end up. Wherever they want to, I guess. The past 8 years have been crazy. I didn't write much at all. I wasn't prolific before that, but those 8 years were something else. I am back. I've edited hundreds of books on a freelance basis and for Broken River. Thank you to all the authors who have worked with me. It's been an honor. I learned a lot about how novels work in that time. I don't always apply those lessons, but they were good to learn all the same. I'm working towards something. I have no idea what that is, but I can feel it there. I believe in practicing in public. So my second goal is to get better with each book. Thanks to my wife, Rios. I'm not sure that universal saints exist, but individual lives have them, and she's mine. Thanks to my son, Gus. I love you, Bubs. Thanks for letting me write this, and thanks for climbing on me while I did it. It helped my multitasking... Blah, blah. I don't know why am I doing this? It helped my multitasking skills. You better not be reading this until you're at least in middle school. Thanks to my friend, Kelby. Don't know what I would do without you, man. You're the realest dude I've ever met, and I love you like family. Thanks to Eddie Rathke, Grant Womack, and David Simmons. The group chat is a life changer. Thanks to Gordon White and his Rune Soup project. Not sure if I'd have a framework for understanding the world without you. And without that, how can you go about creating a new one? Thank you to Chris Saknussem for teaching me a new way to think, and for the great sequence of words, the Black Knight's posse of universal vengeance. Thanks to Takashi Miike, Mike Pondsmith, and all the cyberpunk writers who invented the genre. Thanks to Apple and Microsoft for the wonderful, totally non-invasive and non-detrimental products used to create this novel. About the author. J. David Osborne lives in Oklahoma with his wife and son. He's a co-host of the Agitator podcast with Kelby Losack and the founder of the Broken River Books Collective. That's it. The end. 100% done. Whew. There were some sword fights, some giant guns. There were body alterations. There's a world serpent. What's going on with this world serpent? Jay, you've got 9 more books, and I demand some world serpent. Wait, that sounded really weird. So that's it for this book. God's Fare No Better, Book 1, Dying World, is done. So, my friend Lollernades has caught the back matter ending. So you caught the nonfiction. No, I'm not even reading that comment out loud. Not happening. Oh, my cat. What happened to you? Oh, my cat. Oh, come on, bud. Oh, I didn't hurt you, did I? Oh. I know. It's what happens when you tuck your tail in behind
an office chair with wheels on it, you fool. Thanks for guest starring. This is Heath and my 2 cats. Now, I'm sorry that I rolled over your tail, but when you literally settle in directly behind it, it happens all the time, and you'd think you'd learn, but you don't. So, next up, what should I do next? Well, I've already got permission from at least one other author to read at least one of his books. Oh man, that's bright. And this is The Curse of Shallow Bay by Jay Requard. And he's got another series. So this is Breakneck Tale of Adventure on the High Seas. And then he's also got this other one that I could probably go for, Death and Dust, The Pale Sand Adventures. This is like a weird Western, and that seems probably more what I can probably voice. I can do some Western. We got vampires, we got, revenants, we've got birds, we've got death and dust. So that's probably one of those two. I'll start with the next stream, and there's some other stuff I'm interested in getting to, but that's pretty much it for this stream and for Dying World. So now it's the job to, if I want to try to do something so stupid, to edit the different sessions and make one actual audiobook and go through and do the painstaking process of fixing a couple corrections. I know there's at least one place where I used the wrong character voices for somebody, and I was pronouncing one of their characters like way differently in the first 2 chapters that she appeared in. So I will have to decide whether I want to do that or not, and then we could podcast it or something. So that's it. And until next time, I'm probably just going to play some Elden Ring or some guitar or apologize to my cat some more. And until then, this has been me reading books to you. Cheers.